Welcome back, everyone. I hope you used the last 2 hours to go through our expo and sessions area and had a good lunch. We are here live again from Goethe in Vienna, continuing our program, which brings us to the second track of the day. The last part of our conference is going to deal with several interesting topics such as trading and blockchain governance. Moreover, it will give everybody a chance to get involved in community roundtables and share their opinion on some of the matters that we already heard today. So get ready one last time for plenty of interesting talks, insightful panel discussions, and lots of networking. I would like to now welcome Emi Lorincz, Director for Sales and Business Development at Ledger, to the stage. Emi will tell us about control, scalability, and agility because security is not enough. Emi, hello and welcome.
Hi, Shiva. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. And I prefer to be rather in Vienna, connecting with all of you, but it's also fun to be able to connect this way without ever leaving my living room. So today we will be talking about Ledger Vault, the enterprise solution of Ledger. And my colleagues Antoine and Durim are here with me, and they will be answering the chat or the questions in the chat. So please tune in and let's start. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. Let me know if you see the screen. Perfect. And do you see my video as well? Or as in the picture? Well, and let me just fix that quickly, and then we can talk about the enterprise solution of Ledger, the Ledger Vault. Great. So I'm calling in from Zurich in Switzerland, and we do have a presence in the DACH region as we are rolling out the Ledger Vault product. I'm sure many of you know Ledger because of the Ledger Nano, the retail product, the hardware wallet of Ledger. And today we won't address this, but we will talk about the enterprise solution, the Ledger Vault. So a brief history about Ledger. The company was founded in 2014 by 8 individuals who have very complementary skills from hardware security or software security. Some of them are experts in cybersecurity, and as they added together their complementary expertise, the company has been scaled and grew, and we nearly sold 2 million hardware wallets, as in 1 to 8 million hardware wallets to date. We have over 200 employees, and our mission is to empower the individual, empower financial institutions, and empower also industrial companies to secure the digital critical assets what they are holding. We have a worldwide presence. So we have offices in New York City, in London, in Paris. That's where our headquarters is, and also in Singapore. Our production plant is in Verzion in France, just 1 hour outside Paris. Let me give you a bit of an overview how we are securing these critical digital assets, as in which are the 3 business arms, as I mentioned, the Nano S and Nano X, the consumer wallet. And then because some of our customers have been asking us for a product which helps them scale and also helps them manage their digital assets through a product which has a governance, we built the Ledger Vault product. And then the third arm, which you see on the right-hand side, is Ledger Origin, addressing the IoT area. As mentioned, some of our clients who manage tens of millions of digital assets and trade every day, they do use and used nanos for a really long time, and they just put those hardware wallets in a safe. Now that does not come with a smooth governance. That comes with a lot of risk. Your security is not there, because if one of your employees is losing the hardware wallet or uses the keys, then what are you going to do? So in order to address security, you need to have a hardware wallet element and also a software combined with that. That is what the Ledger Vault does. And while doing this, we address also the scalability. So such solutions, what we see often, that the private keys are down in a Swiss mountain, in a Swiss bunker, they are just not scalable, especially in times where, for whatever reason, you're not able to go and extract those keys. You need another solution. Let me give you a brief overview about some of our clients. We are proud to be working with such renowned companies like Crypto.com, like Bankfreak out of Liechtenstein, the private bank, or Virgo CX out of Canada, and here Komainu in the upper left corner, which is a joint venture of Ledger together with Nomura, the Japanese bank. You guys may know Nomura. And also Global Advisors is part of that joint venture. These are the coins we cover. As you see, the top 10 assets when it comes to the volume are there. And with these coins, especially all the ERC20s and the coins which we are going to integrate the next month, we cover, as of today, 95% of the market cap. The governance framework of the Ledger Vault is very unique and addresses the pain points and the needs of institutions which are handling critical digital assets, because it comes with the opportunity of setting up conditional flows. You can have multi-signatures if you need to, and you have approval groups. You can set up on an account level all these conditional flows, but also on a group level. And of course, whitelisting is also available on the platform. This little infographic gives you a sneak peek of how the US or UX and UI, so the user interface, is looking like on the Ledger Vault platform. Let me tell you more about how are we leveraging the same kind of technology, what we use at the nano devices. We use that at the Ledger Vault as well. And we don't use the nano itself. However, we use another device, the Ledger Blue, which you see here on the screen. This is like a palm top. It is as big as the iPad, for instance. And what's very unique about this, that every person who signs the transactions in your company or in the organization, they are having their own personal device in order to authenticate the transactions. So you sign the transaction and you also authorize that that's you who owns that personal device. This is a trusted display. So basically nothing on this can be forced or modified. So the hackers can't hack this device. You're sending the funds really to the address which you're seeing on the screen of the Ledger Blue. Now, many of you may think that, oh, okay, so the Ledger Vault solution is a cold wallet. And I said it's a cold solution. However, this is not correct because it's high flexibility, and because you can accustom it to your needs. You can have wallets which are tightly controlled, like the one on the left hand side, where if you like 4 users out of 4 users, 4 has to sign in order to get that transaction approved. And you can set up for higher amounts that these only go to whitelisted addresses, as in these funds go only to whitelisted addresses. As we go more to the right, the wallet is getting a bit warmer, and the one on the right requires only one transaction, and you can send it to any address. So this is basically to showcase that you're not losing out on the security when you maintain a higher flexibility. We are beyond proud to have secured 150 million USD worth of insurance from our partner ARC UK Lloyd's of London. So this insurance is a pooled insurance. Ledger Vault is the beneficiary of the insurance, and it protects you against 3 main thefts. Third-party theft, so when it is related to the master seed. So if someone would steal part of the seed or the entire seed, and basically this is relating to the assets which are resting on the vault. And when you are transacting these assets, when you are transacting the funds, your insurance is still covering if something would go wrong during the transaction. Now, the third part, what the insurance covers, is also if a ledger employee would try to get in the possession of these funds. So the main differentiator of the Ledger Vault, when we look at the competitors' landscape, is that we have the secure channel element, which protects or set up and protects this solution against every middle threat vector. So when you log into the Vault platform, that's a web interface, and you can interact through that web interface with the Ledger Blue Enterprise product, as in, the little palm top, the personal device, and you're authorizing transactions through that. And once that signature has been sent, it reaches the HSM, which is going to, for those of you who don't know what the HSM is, it's the hardware security module, which is used and has been used in financial services for 20, 30, 40 years in order to protect key secrets, mostly in banking. So once this message gets to the HSM, then it's going to be encrypted, and the transaction is going to be signed. And as a result of that, it's going to be automatically posted on the open blockchain. Let me tell you more about the operations and what is very unique about the supply chain of Ledger. So when we assemble every Ledger design, every Ledger product, every component of the hardware wallet is done internally. So we have our own facilities, our own plant in Verzion, and the manufacturing is happening there. Then the design is also in-house, and we are not dependent on any third party, basically. And this is why we have a supply chain which we fully control and we can trust, because everything is happening under the roof of Ledger. These data centers where our HSMs are stored are also highly protected, and we selected those data centers which are the most resilient and secure in order to protect our HSMs. And above that, or on the top of it, these HSMs also come with a multi-layer tampering protection. So if any risk or any natural disaster would happen, let's say a flooding, then the HSM would copy that secret and all the keys to another HSM in another data center in order to fully protect and maintain the information on it. We are proud to have been certified by the agency, the French National Cyber Agency, the ANSI, and we received this certificate, the CSNP. Excuse my French. I'm not going to read this what the abbreviation stands for because my French is not perfect. But you're welcome to look up what this certificate stands for. It is the highest level of certificate you can get in cybersecurity and security, as in cybersecurity and technology. So this is to certify or ledger nano product, but on the Vault arm, as in the enterprise product, is undergoing a SOC 2 Type 2 certificate right now. And that is looking at the policies, implementations of processes and controls. So who knows the Ledger Donjon? Have you guys heard of this fabulous team, which is part of the Ledger family? And what they do nonstop, they are trying to hack our own products. And not only the Ledger products, that's most of the time what they are trying to do, but they are also trying to hack other hardware wallets or other solutions of the industry relating to security, always pushing the bar higher and maintaining the standard and challenging all actors who are providing security in the space to be ahead of this. The security game is like the cat and mouse kind of game. So as in, you always have to stay ahead of the hackers. And everything is open source. All findings of the Ledger Donjon are open source. You're welcome to check out their Twitter account. So as a recap, the Ledger Vault is here to protect and help you transact smoothly, as in to protect your critical digital assets. And while we do that, you can focus on your core business, on your core offering, because with the Ledger Vault, you have a peace of mind, you have agility, control, and you can also scale your business and accustom the software to your needs. Thank you so much for your attention. And please do reach out to us. We are here in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, as well as in London, in New York, and Singapore, and are open to have a demo with you and answer all your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Emi, for this. Our next speaker is the director at NEO Global Development. NEO is a leading community-driven public blockchain, which is an open network for a smart economy. She has been on the advisory board of many blockchain projects and companies worldwide. I am pleased to welcome Lili Zhao on the stage. Lili, hello. It's good to have you here.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for joining me today. So I will start today's presentation by first looking at a very current and very global topic, that is globalization. And then we will look at how blockchain technology can power the next wave of globalization. And then we'll look at what is needed for blockchain technology to be ready. And then we'll look at what NEO has been doing in 2020, and specifically what we are doing to address those elements of blockchain readiness. And then we'll look at the NEO's vision of smart economy, and I'll also share with you my personal thoughts on the concept of smart economy. And then I hope I don't overrun my slots and can finish on time in 20 minutes. So let's begin. Let me share with you my presentation. Let me hope that everything works smoothly. Okay. Just bear with me for a moment. Yes. Sorry, it's taking me longer. I think you're still seeing my face. That's not what I want to do. Yeah. Yes, this is the one I'm clicking. I need to find my, Sorry, everyone. Yes. I'm really sorry. So if you have a cup of tea or coffee, please sip a cup of tea and let me sort this. It's quite embarrassing. Okay, globalization. Okay. Now I think I found it. Yes, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you. So now I can slouch back in my chairs and yes. So that's the title, Globalization, Neo and Smart Economy. And I'm Lili Zhao. Now let's move forward. So where are we now? In the middle of a global pandemic, the sentiment of deglobalization has been increasing. Indeed, The Economist, in its latest edition, ran a front page article on Goodbye Globalization. It has posed the question, has COVID-19 killed globalization? Well, according to The Economist, the greatest era of globalization is gone. We need to worry about what is going to take its place. Well, I see it differently. So, of course, during a global pandemic, globalization looks dead as everything seems to be put on hold. But if we look at this graph, we see that globalization has been an upward trend. And as society progresses and technology advances, the pace of globalization is particularly steep. So now we are in the age of globalization 4.0, which is characterized by fourth industrial revolution, such as artificial intelligence, big data, 5G, IoT, blockchain technology. So as we move from atoms to bits, from physical to digital, with no borders to shut down, globalization is no longer a choice, but by nature and by default. So COVID-19 will not kill globalization, but it will be a setback like other major historical events, such as World War I, World War II, the collapse of the USSR, the global financial crisis along the globalization path. Now, I would like to quote the founder of World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, on Globalization 4.0. It has only just begun, but we are already vastly unprepared for it. Now, to also quote the philosopher and communication theorist Paul Václavic on the 5 axioms of communication. The very first one is one cannot not communicate. So to paraphrase him, I would say in a global village, one cannot not globalize. So whether we choose to engage in globalization or not, we are globalizing. Now, so we have established globalization is here to stay, but it does need to evolve. Even before the COVID-19, there has been sense of deglobalization, largely driven by the resulting inequality from globalization. So the problem is actually not globalization, and therefore the solution is not deglobalization. And the problem is the distribution of globalization benefits, in my opinion. So the current globalization model, the so-called win-win model, is that I win 95%, you win 5%. Thank you, how nice of you. And I take the bread and you pick up the crumb. But hey, the crumb is getting bigger. You're welcome. As you can see, such globalization model is not sustainable. As the stakeholders in this globalization value chain move up, and the value creation from globalization needs to be more fairly and transparently distributed. Blockchain technology provides exactly such a mechanism. But is blockchain ready to serve such a grand mission? So as an industry, we still need to work on many aspects for the blockchain to be ready. And here, let's look at 3 aspects. The first one, adaptability. As we see in the blockchain space, we often see very binary choices between permissions and permissionless, between centralized and decentralized, on-chain and off-chain. So blockchain has its origin in ideology, which is beautiful and which is why so many of us are in this space. It's not just a domain of technology, but also economic, philosophy, and politics. But as we enter into the real-world application, and in this case, blockchain needs to serve the real-world use case, then we're looking at a more multivariant spectrum. So being pragmatic, being adaptable is the path forward. Now, the second aspect of blockchain readiness is on tokenization. As most of you have seen, this is a very popular topic, as also in this last 2 days conference, many great speakers have also commented on tokenization. So asset tokenization is the crucial step in digitalizing the economy. Everything can be tokenized. So let's look at the tangible to intangible. Non-fungible tokens such as collectibles, tickets, and art, to financial instruments such as stock, bond, fund, to fiat money such as USD, Euro, RMB, to physical objects such as car, gold, and real estate. And also the topic of CBDC, central bank digital currency, has been a very popular topic as well. Many central governments are exploring this. Indeed, China is not only exploring, but very close to unveil its CBDC to the public. Now, the third aspect is interoperability. So interoperability, this one is quite intuitive. As we know in the blockchain space, currently there are many blockchains, each with its own tokens and its own ecosystem. And they are not able to talk to each other technically. What is tokenized on the Neo blockchain, it doesn't work on Ethereum, and vice versa. As you can see, this severely restricts the flow of the free flow of assets. So it is in my opinion that as long as we do not solve interoperability issues, then the potential of blockchain will never be fully unleashed. So Neo is currently working on an interoperability protocol, and it serves as an adapter. So different established blockchain can connect to this adapter, and through these adapters, they are able to talk to each other and to make cross-chain asset transfers. Now let's look at Neo in 2020, what we have been working on, and also how we are addressing those aspects of blockchain readiness. Yes. Oh. So as you can see, there are lots of things on this one slide, and Neo 3. So Neo 3 is complete new blockchain that Neo has been working on in the past years. Currently, Neo is running on Neo 2 and Neo 3. The migration of Neo 3 will take place sometime this year. And now let's first look at the protocol layer. And as you can see, interoperability is part of the architecture. And here, as we migrate from Neo 2.0 to Neo 3, and both blockchain will be running concurrently. So this interoperability will serve as a bridge for the migration from Neo 2 to Neo 3. And there's also new governance on Neo 3 with voting and staking incentive, and also on-chain and off-chain governance. In fact, Neo co-founder Da Hongfei gave a very insightful speech at Consensus distributed last week on governance on Neo 3. So if any of you would like to have more detailed information on this topic, then I would recommend you to check Da Hongfei's speech, which is uploaded on Neo Smart Economy's YouTube channel. And at the protocol layer, we also optimize the performance, stability, and security. And then let's look at the components layers. We added new components such as new Neo ID, Neo file storage, and built-in oracles. And also the infrastructure layers. There are wallets, SDK, Monitor, Explorer being constantly upgraded as well. Now, it's important to mention that the most of the components layer and infrastructure layers are done by the very talented, devoted Neo developer communities, which are spread out globally. Neo is very developer focused and very developer friendly in terms of common programming language. we are always excited to grow our developer community. So if any of you want to contribute, develop on NEO, and please do get in touch. And here the application layers, and on NEO, there are more than 100 apps built on NEO from different industry and sectors. And also some projects working on the tokenization framework as well. And here is also important to mention that as we are launching NEO 3, which is something I am really, really excited. Even though not being a developer myself, NEO 3 is designed to serve a large-scale commercial usage. And we have launched a newly adopted program to support the apps which will migrate from NEO 2 to NEO 3, or any new apps which will be built on NEO 3 brand new. So if you would like to be a newly adopted for NEO 3, then please also get in touch, see how we can support you. And also it's important to mention that the interoperability protocol NEO is working on the testnet, is already running BTC, Ethereum, NEO, and ANT. As we launch the mainnet, there will be more blockchain and therefore tokens added. So if you are interested in the topic of interoperability, I would also encourage you to get in touch. So now let's move to smart economy. And this is the vision of smart economy. New smart economy has 3 pillars: digital assets, digital identity, and smart contracts. So digital assets, as we mentioned before, everything can be tokenized. But to tokenize is only one part of the story. In fact, tokenization technically is not difficult. The difficult part is building the whole financial infrastructure in a legally compliant setting around tokenization, such as exchange, custody, wallet, etc. And this takes time. So this is not just a tech domain, but legal financial framework. And speaking of being compliant, digital identity is a part of this compliance. So KYC, anti-money laundering can be much easily conducted with digital identity. And also, if we tokenize everything and then our identity is still off-chain, then I wouldn't say we're back to square one, but it doesn't help too much because there is this gap between digital, between on-chain assets and off-chain identity. And of course, not to mention the power of owning your own data, self-sovereign identity. And this is something I also personally find really fascinating. And as we know in this in a centralized platform, if we don't like to use a platform, we have the choice not to use it. But this is not really a choice. And if we say we don't use a platform, we leave, we close our account, then we lose our context, we lose our data. And we are a user of that data, but we're not the owner of it. So if you have a portable digital identity and a self-sovereign identity, then your data and your identity is portable. If we don't like one platform, we can say goodbye, and then we take our identity and plug into different platforms. So yes, there's a lot of potential on the digital identity aspects. Anyway, let's move to smart contracts. So that's basically the enabler for P2P automated transactions. So that's the NEO's vision of smart economy. And there is no universally defined terminology of smart economy. You may have your own definition of smart economy. To me personally, Oh, okay. Speaking of personally, let me come back. This is the last slide of my presentation. Okay, now I'm back, and yeah, worked smoothly this time, yes. So my vision of smart economy. To me, smart economy is powered by blockchain technology, and also other globalization 4.0 technology, such as artificial intelligence and big data, etc. But it's human-centered. Why do I say that? Because that's the key difference I see between digital economy and smart economy. In a digital economy, we have digitalization, and that's technology as the core. In a smart economy, it's humanity as the core. And in a smart economy, we are the technology is there to serve us, not to dictate our life. As most of you have felt in the digital economy, sometimes we feel overwhelmed and outpaced by the speed of technology. So it is my vision or my hope that in a smart economy with automation, the technology will free us to be more human rather than becoming more robotic, which is why I'm not worried about automation robot take over our job and replace us. I'm more worried about we becoming more robotic. Anyway, I think my time is soon up, and let me just, with that, I would like to say that blockchain technology is about bringing people together, and it's created by the community and for the community. And therefore, I warmly invite you to join NEO community. And you can check the websites here, neo.org, and scroll down. You will see follow us. There you will see all the social media handles on that page. So I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference and see you virtually somewhere. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and goodbye. Stay well and stay globalized. Goodbye from Zurich.
Thank you very much, Lili, for your presentation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Our next session is going to be a panel which is going to be moderated by Leah Wald, VP of Portfolio Management at Exponential. Leah will be joined by Ton Weiss, who is a content creator, derivatives trader, and consultant. Anatoly Kniazev, who is an executive director at Exante, and finally Matti Greenspan, who is the founder of Quantum Economics. Welcome, everybody. Leah, on to you.
Thank you so much, Tone, Anthony, and Matti. It is so great to be able to moderate your panel today. I am very excited. Thank you, everyone. I am going to dive right in and get to the nitty-gritty of this, if that's okay, because this is going to be good fun. And Tone, since I know you way too well, I'm going to switch this to Matti to begin with, as I have just started to get to know you, Matti. Matti, you've said, and you knew I was going to ask you something along these lines, that the S&P and Bitcoin have recently decoupled. So why does this matter? And also, do you think that it matters differently for retail and for institutional investors?
Okay, so two-part question there. First of all, we have to understand that Bitcoin and the S&P 500 have been quite closely correlated, not extremely strongly, but quite closely correlated since COVID-19 has begun. Recently, the price action in the short term has indicated that we might be getting a decoupling, and that's basically since the halving event, Bitcoin has gone up while the stock market has kind of stayed where it is, gone down a little bit. So the correlation metrics are, on a minimum measured on a 90-day period. So we're only about a week and a half after the halving event, so it's still a bit early to tell as far as that's concerned. And your question about institutional trading and why it matters is because institutions, we're really seeing them join the market as far as the crypto market in a very big way right now with the CME Group and others seeing a huge surge in their volumes. So a lot of what the price action that we're seeing right now does seem to be coming from institutional players who are, for the very first time, trying to hedge the markets with Bitcoin. And that only works if there's some sort of a decoupling where Bitcoin is separate from the stocks.
Thank you, Mati. Tone, would you like to respond to that? I'll hold off on my intense questions towards you, but response to what Mati just said about decoupling.
Sure. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction there, Mati. I still think that Bitcoin and the stock market are pretty correlated, and they always were. We've been watching a giant 10-year run-up in Bitcoin, and we saw the same thing with the stock market. It's just that the one thing that I've noticed is that the beta of this correlation could significantly vary. Bitcoin generally rises when the stocks rise, and it falls when stocks fall, but they peak to new all-time highs, and their corrections, they peak to new all-time highs at different times. So the Bitcoin went to a new all-time high in 2017. Stock market did as well. It made a new all-time high in 2017, but then Bitcoin was correcting for 2 years while the stock market continued to make new highs. However, if you look at it on a multiple, just a few months scale, Bitcoin would rise when the stock market rises. It was in a bear market. So the beta of that correlation was greatly changing. And I'm kind of still seeing that. The stock market, Bitcoin and the stock market both crashed in March, and they both have been rising. They've been rising slightly differently, but both of them are still sitting lower than the highs of about a year ago. And Bitcoin has been consolidating, and so has the S&P 500 since that halving. I know a lot of people think that Bitcoin has popped going into the halving, but Bitcoin popped a month before the halving as well, and we still haven't broken that high. I still think they're correlated, but the fact that the beta of that correlation is constantly different makes it very difficult to analyze. And I also have not put direct numbers to it. It's just more of watching both of them all day, every day.
Thank you, Tone. And Anthony, from a brokerage perspective, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I guess Tone nailed it. Definitely correlated. Beta will rise. From the flows of the clients, we see that if you consider a general investor, not a particularly crypto-oriented one, definitely when everything falls, no one's buying Bitcoin or other crypto. And when everything rises, people also tend to first buy stocks or bonds, like traditional investments, and only then consider cryptos. So that's what we're seeing, actually. There is some influx of new investors to crypto. The institutionals, everyone been waiting for since, 2015 at least. But it's happening quite gradually and slower than I would like, perhaps. Traditional investors, as I said, they still prefer stocks, and S&P recovered remarkably. I mean, Bitcoin recovered from, if we remove the BitMEX crash of March 13th, if we say that the bottom was actually 5,000, Bitcoin recovered also nicely to 9,700. But for stocks to move up almost 50% in a month's time, it's very remarkable.
Thank you. And Mati, continuing on this conversation, has the halving changed your opinion on investing in other altcoins within a diversified portfolio, or are you still primarily focused on Bitcoin? What does your portfolio look like right now?
At the moment, I've got about 80% in Bitcoin. I went in 100% into Bitcoin into the halving just because there was a lot of excitement and hype around the halving event. But I did taper that back somewhat. Still 80% is a lot for me. Usually as far as a crypto only portfolio is concerned, we talk about 50 or 60%. What Tone mentioned, though, I just wanted to dispute because I understand that he's looking at the directions and everything like that, but percentages matter. And if we look at just from the bottom in mid-March, so March 16, the stock market is up 11%, whereas Bitcoin is up 82%. So that means that we are breaking that correlation somewhat.
Thanks, Monty. Tone, would you like to respond since it was directed at you?
Yeah, to me, percentages don't really matter that much because we are comparing one of the most liquid markets in the world versus a very illiquid market. I ran into the same thing with and also the price just differences. Not that much liquidity in Bitcoin. You mentioned, Mati, how the CME futures are getting a lot more volume and liquidity, and things like that will help. But I try not to compare percentages of something that's very illiquid versus something that is. I'm running into the same issue with gold and silver. I took the silver trade, which worked out very nicely a few months ago. Both of them were kind of breaking out, and I didn't want to. I wanted to just choose one. I didn't want to manage too many trades. I chose to enter the gold breakout trade, and gold only went up 3%, and silver went up 11%. So I didn't choose wisely on that breakout. Different assets. And the gold and silver are way more similar to each other versus S&P and Bitcoin. And if we can have one precious metal go up 3% while the other go up 11%, simply based on speculation, there's not that much inherent demand in either of them. And if there is inherent demand, it would be towards gold, not towards silver. So it's just speculation and a less liquid market that can drive percentages much higher. Okay, and what was the other question on Leah?
Your other question, to Mati, was specifically, is he more interested in other altcoins
diversification.
I know Tone's answer on that one.
That's easy. I'm 100% Bitcoin, 0% altcoins, and it's been that way since about 2015, 14, God knows.
Since the altcoins were born.
Yeah, almost. No. I had my shitcoin phase for like maybe 6 months a while ago, back in like 2014, but that ended fairly quickly.
Let the record show, Tone just admitted. Anthony, how much do you weigh technical analysis and fundamental analysis, just from what you're seeing day to day, as important for just sorry, let me rephrase that nice and easy. How much do you think technical analysis versus fundamental analysis is important in understanding the crypto market over traditional markets?
It's a good spin. I mean, usually when people ask me about TA in the traditional markets, I just say that I've yet to see any successful trader or firm utilizing TA and making money consistently year on year. But with cryptos, it's sort of hard to trade from the fundamentals, and people still want to gamble, so they resort to technical analysis. I hope I'm not sort of offending any trader here. That's just my take. I've always tried to approach crypto same as I approach stocks, so from the fundamentals. And if you take this approach, obviously you're not going to have more than 3, maybe 5 cryptos in your portfolio. All the rest is just, I don't know, totally insignificant in the grand scheme of things, like completely irrelevant, to be honest.
Thank you. Mati, provocative question. What would have to happen for Bitcoin to drop all the way to 1,000?
I don't know. Unforeseen circumstances, I guess. Problem with the network. Could be, I don't know. Look, if we see too much activity on Bitcoin, we could get a clog in the network, and that wouldn't be good. Transaction fees go up, people start leaving. I mean, we saw something of that in 2017 when we were at $20,000 per coin, but obviously that would imply that the price is going up very quickly, and hence the reason people want to get in. I don't really. I mean, it's possible. Anything is possible. I mean, Bitcoin could go to $100, I wouldn't want to rule it out. I mean, especially if, I don't know, some smart guy came and figured out how to hack the network. Still early days, so I guess that's a possibility, even though I don't see it as an extremely likely one. I think it's probably a lot more likely that we'll see some ridiculous figure. Pick your highest number, 50,000, 250, a million. I don't know what it is. But obviously, nobody can tell the future.
Thank you, Mati. Tone, turning it to you.
Ridiculous.
Oh, hey.
Sorry,
No, please go for it. What'd you say, Anthony?
No, I didn't hear
50,000 is not ridiculous. It's like...
So what would it take for us to get to 50,000?
I want to answer both of those questions. So FA versus TA. So before I talk about FA, I want to separate real fundamental analysis versus listening to CNBC and Bloomberg or reading articles and reacting to the news. That's not fundamental analysis. A lot of people confuse, reaction to news events as I'm doing fundamental analysis. No, you're not doing any fundamental analysis by reading publicly available information. So let's remove reacting to news events. So as far as real FA, real fundamental analysis of, let's say, looking into earnings reports or paying attention to how the company is doing, or even in the cryptocurrency space, FA versus TA, the bigger your operation, the more you're going to be focusing on FA. So if, because as a small trader at home, you do not have the ability to do real FA. It's just impossible. So the only thing you can do is do TA based on where the big boys are moving their money. And the bigger you are, the less TA is useful to you, and the more you need to focus on fundamental analysis. And that's why none of the big firms none of the big trading operations are using technical analysis. They're using fundamental analysis. But if you're an at-home trader, your best chance of success is being good at TA because FA is just impossible for you. Now, on to the other question, Bitcoin dropping to 1,000. Again, I'm going to change the question slightly. What are the, it's not whether a Bitcoin falls to 1,000, it's whether it stays around 1,000. And that I don't see. Like, for example, if we go to sleep tonight, and then we wake up in the morning, and while we were asleep, Bitcoin dropped down to 1,000, but by the time we woke up, it was back to 9,000. It doesn't really matter. Well, it doesn't matter to us. I'm sorry. Matters
Unless
to
you got a
some
stop
people.
loss.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're a trader, it matters, right? But if you are like a Bitcoin hodler, and the majority of people are, like how much Bitcoin is really out there on exchanges versus how much Bitcoin is, saved away in cold storage. It's like you woke up in the morning and you found out that during the night, gold dropped to 20 cents. And now you woke up and now gold is back up to $1,200. So yeah, it affected some people, but the people that it affected is really, really small. So the real question is, what are the chances that Bitcoin drops down to 1,000 or lower and actually stays there for an extended period of time, giving the majority of the people to consider what's going to happen to Bitcoin's future? And I think the probability of that is extremely small. We could have, other exchange failures. We could have, Satoshi come out and like sell his coins at once. The real question is, what is the probability of Bitcoin going down that low and staying there? And unless there is a huge bug that like destroys the Bitcoin code or some, global crackdown on regulation on Bitcoin, I just don't see it. I just don't see Bitcoin going down that low and staying there for more than an hour or two. So I don't see that happen.
Thank you, Tone. Anthony, by the way, gentlemen, whenever you'd like to respond to each other's conversations, I am no dictator. Have fun. So your response, Anthony, and also we have now a bullish and a bearish case of 50,000 and potentially 1,000 with different scenarios, what may get us there. So if you could also respond to your thoughts on both, either, whatever you're feeling.
I don't think anyone here is expecting 1,000 at least to stay for some continuous time. And I would gladly sell 1,000 puts to anyone willing to pay to put a nice bid, but no one's putting there's no market for Bitcoin 1,000 puts. You cannot get a bid even like a 0.000 something, I assume. So there's that. And 50,000, I mean, we all seen December 2017 And so 50,000 from 10,000 we are right now, it's not unreasonable. It's like normal business for Bitcoin. So there is that. Also
Mati, were you
agree,
saying something?
Tone, on the TA point. I agree that fundamentals in crypto is a sort of a very like uncertain matter. It's hard to define a fundamental for a blockchain project like Bitcoin, but you can actually
Well, the fundamentals are the rate of issuance, right?
Yeah, a lot of stuff you can actually process more. You have more access to stuff like wallet creations, transaction volumes, etc., which is on chain compared to traditional companies. So you cannot like grab data from the books of Microsoft. You only receive earnings calls every 3 months. In Bitcoin, when someone moves coins from Coinbase to Bitfinex and then some USDT is printed, you can monitor it online instantly. So there's a huge distinction, and a trader at home can and should utilize it, and that's for sure.
So what you're saying is there's a more level playing field because the data is more open source.
Yeah.
Certainly, there are companies like Chainalysis and those that kind of do more in-depth research and analysis on the blockchain. But in general, I agree with you that the playing field is a lot more. But I also obviously, I've never been inside of a hedge fund, but I do receive technical analysis from Goldman Sachs and several others. Perhaps it's just the sell side, but they certainly are producing it.
Thanks. Anjali, a follow-up question from your perspective. With more and more sophisticated investment products coming out, what do you think is going to get the biggest interest moving forward? Are we going to see more of a spike in, in futures and, derivative spot? What's all the excitement? Where's the interest going to go?
Two things. Well, first, I guess options. CME launched options this year. They have surprisingly low volumes. Like futures trading picked up much faster than options are doing. The volume is getting there, but it's like nowhere near Deribit even. So it's like very, very low. And the markets are illiquid, so you cannot get a good trade. So there's that, but it will improve. It will improve, I have no doubts. And second, after the BitMEX fiasco of March 13th or 12th night from 12th to 13th, I think more and more people will care about the credit risk of the exchange. And that will mean basically three things. Either moving to decentralized finance trading, or using separated clearinghouse arrangements like traditional exchanges actually do, that will cover a bunch of exchanges, and you will know that your money are safe with a clearinghouse, and if BitMEX goes down, you do not bear the losses. Or third point, I think, is the leveraging of the market and coming with new ways to provide leverage with a guaranteed backstops. I know some projects working in this area. Basically, you'll need to buy an option from the opposite side of your trade that will cover his or her blow-up exposure. Like, it gets a bit complicated, but after what happened on BitMEX, all the institutional guys I've talked to are really concerned with the credit risk of the exchanges. And these three ways to solve it, they get more and more attention.
That makes sense.
Not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right? I mean, shouldn't we have all been worried about credit risk of exchanges from the beginning? I was just looking at Tone's face when you said the word clearinghouses. I think something might have popped there. Bitcoin has the option to self-custody. We don't need to necessarily put it anywhere else.
And so absolutely true. And at this point, I feel like Tone's going to run off and get his Rodolfo's hat that says, the honey badger, not your keys, not your coins. But before he does, one more investment product. Tone, are we going to see an ETF?
I think we will. Probably. I think we will. Again, I wrote this article in the beginning of the year on January 3rd. I think my outlook for this year, and one of them was my price outlook. The other one was like hash rate and Bitcoin's dominance over these altcoins is going to rise. But another thing I wrote was by the end of this year, I'm not expecting an ETF to be out by the end of this year, but I am expecting at some point this year, the SEC is going to have to say that, okay, guys, we will work with the company to give you an ETF because there's just going to be so much demand for it. And it's not fair to retail investors that don't have a real opportunity of a liquid, legitimate ETF. We have futures, that's very leveraged. We have options, that's very sophisticated. I'm an options trader. I would love for those CME options to have some kind of real volume so I can trade those in my retirement account, because that's what I'm currently doing in my retirement account, trading options. And my only option in my retirement account is GBTC. And I've always been critical at how GBTC was structured with this giant premium. And the regulators need to find a way to make a legitimate ETF. Now, we just saw this with USO, the oil ETF, when no one expected oil prices to go negative. So crazier things than Bitcoin going down to 1,000 have happened recently, even this year. And they had to restructure the way the underlying of USO functions, because once the price of oil went to unforeseen levels, people took a look, how is USO constructed? And even I said on my channel within 5 minutes, oh my God, that's going to be a disaster for USO. So they immediately got permission to restructure it. So they're going to come up with a good solution. It's going to be challenging. Who's in control of the underlying Bitcoin? How do you make sure that the price that determines the value of that ETF is legitimate? And the CME ran into this problem as well, because the index that they're using is relying on crypto exchanges, and they realized they don't really have transparency into those exchanges like they wanted, and those exchanges aren't exactly cooperative with the US government because some of them are not even US companies. But I think some clarity on this issue is coming, and within the next 2 years, I think we will have a Bitcoin ETF.
Thanks, Tone. Mati, what are your thoughts?
I actually don't know. It could happen, could not. I mean, I know that Ryan Selkis from Masari was pretty bullish on getting a Bitcoin ETF. I mean, you know, Gabor Gorbaks from Van Eck has been pretty much staking his career on it. I've just learned that Tone Vase thinks that we're going to get an ETF within the next 2 years. Honestly, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not familiar enough to make that kind of call. I think that it would be a good thing for the industry. I think that it would be a good thing for the world, and let's hope it happens.
Thanks, Monty. And Anatoly, can you tell us, what do you think are the biggest mistakes that other crypto hedge funds have made?
Leverage. I mean, the three most common mistakes in general we've seen is leverage, concentration, and illiquidity. And any of these three can kill a hedge fund or a prop firm really fast. But in crypto, leverage, as we've seen again, this event, March 13th, it's really impactful. Like the whole industry is like still shaken up, and rebuilding processes, risk controls, etc., the leverage into. So leverage on that night would have killed you. We know some funds that they have lost close to hundreds of millions USD for this only reason they were leveraged, even like 1 to 2 on BitMEX. So just borrowing the same amount of money they thought they have. So leverage in crypto, even if it feels lucrative for some trader trading from his or her home, even if you think you're gonna do like 5-7 very impactful trades in a row and double your NAV, double your account, you have to use leverage for that. I would advise against it, and I would advise to check very carefully how your portfolio going to behave at another disaster scenario, like we've seen in March on BitMEX and other leveraged exchanges. So leverage, one word.
That's a very good answer. I'm going to throw that to you, Tone. I know that you've discussed the topic quite extensively, and your law review sometimes covers also regulations on the many hedge funds that have fallen under in the United States. Do you want to make a comment to Anatoly?
No, I agree. Money management. It's look, my channel mostly focuses on TA, but I've said it many times. No, being good at TA is not what makes a good trader. It's your money management and risk management that will keep you in the game, because no matter how many trades you get right in a row, one wrong trade will make sure you never trade again. So that's the big caveat with every hedge fund. It has nothing to do with crypto. I mean, we can go back to long-term capital management, where the creators of that hedge fund were the creators of the option pricing model, trading options. And not only did they blow up their hedge fund, they almost blew up the entire financial system. So that's always been the big downfall. What concerns me more in crypto is that there's no regulation per se, and it's not great. And probably 3 years ago or 2 years ago, I did an episode of Crypto Scam titled Crypto Hedge Funds. And I literally took a look at some of those crypto hedge funds, and they're being like run and advertised by high school dropouts, basically. And you can tell this by their other social media. And they were getting money. They were being written about in Forbes that they're running this hedge fund. And you take a look at the history of the people behind it, and you just can't help but laugh that no one did a Google search on the names at the top of this hedge fund. So look, do your due diligence. Don't hand over money to people you don't know, especially if it's in Bitcoin form, because then you have absolutely no recourse when something goes wrong. So those are some of this fault lies with the investors. You got to be careful. But yeah, money management is key for any trader's survival.
Thanks, Tone. Mati, follow up?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll echo that sentiment. I'll echo it times 100. Any broker or exchange that's offering 100 times leverage on crypto is a flat out scam. It's not possible to make money with that type of leverage. You just end up liquidating your account time after time after time, especially in crypto. I mean, 100 times leverage on a currency trade, okay, fine, because currencies move so little. I mean, what's the maximum that you can move in a day is 1%. Cryptocurrencies can move 10%, 20%, 30% in a single day. That's extreme volatility already, and there's no need to add leverage. If you add maybe 2 times leverage, all right, fine. But once you get up to 10 times, you're really putting yourself in danger. And as Tone said, it's all about money management. That's what's gonna make the difference between staying in the game and consistent profits versus crashing your account time and time again. For myself, and I know, like, I like to point at my eToro account, which is a 100% crypto account. That's less than 1% of my portfolio. So always take things with a grain of salt.
Can I take the other? I wanna make a little argument towards maybe not 100x leverage, but at least 20x leverage. I'm with you, Maddie, that 100x leverage is a little insane. But I really like the fact that, say, 10, 20, maybe even 50x leverage exists on some of these derivatives exchanges in the crypto space that I'm not going to name names. And that's for me, because I do like risk management. It provides me great risk management. It was something we talked about earlier. You have huge exchange risk. So by me having a product that gives me 20x leverage, I can risk, 19 times less BTC in a trade. So if I'm entering a trade and my stop loss on that trade is, say, a 5% move in Bitcoin against me, I can enter a 20x leverage trade and only risk the amount I'm willing to lose with a stop loss without the rest sitting on an unregulated exchange, potentially due to a hack. So there are ways to use this high leverage properly. And the other slight argument I'll say is it's not necessarily a scam to offer this leverage. Like Goldman Sachs was offering all kinds of toxic derivatives back that helped cause the 08 financial crisis. It was, if Goldman Sachs is betting, literally putting money against it, it's bad. But hey, if a company like JP Morgan or others want to buy these toxic instruments, and Goldman Sachs, if they want to buy them, Goldman Sachs will make them and sell them to you. There were other things that they did wrong and everybody did wrong, but just having these products that other people want to buy and use is not necessarily, scammy in my opinion. Okay, but Tone, you have to differentiate yourself. I'm sorry. You are what's known as a complex trader. Certainly you have ways to use these tools, but let's be real. They're marketing to beginners. They're marketing to retail investors who are going to more than likely
almost assuredly lose all of their money on the platform. And if that's the case, that's what you call a scam.
Sure.
I'd be very surprised if any of them are taking any of these trades to the market. They're just p-booking it. They're taking the money, putting it in their pocket, and let the trader lose his money.
Sure, but that's a different
Simple as
issue,
that.
right? I have the same view on Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin itself isn't, Bitcoin itself doesn't do anything anything bad. It's what you do with that Bitcoin that could be seen as bad. So it's the same thing. Yeah, if they have bad advertising practices and not properly educating and trying to suck people in to lose it, then that part is certainly troublesome, and hopefully there will be regulation to prevent that. But the product itself, I try to separate.
Thanks, Anatoly. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, definitely sophisticated advanced traders like Ton use and should use leverage as a means for managing credit risk. Absolutely. What we've seen, again, on this March event, is that you thought that you can, for example, in case of a crash, move funds from exchange A to exchange B to cover your margin call. And all of a sudden, you figured out that exchange A goes down and you cannot meet your margin call, even though you have the funds, theoretically, and you get liquidated on exchange B. Or exchange A is up and running, but you can only withdraw funds once a day. And you cannot cover your margin call on exchange B and you're liquidated. Or you're sending funds from your hot wallet, cold wallet, whatever, and exchange B is processing funds every hour and you're liquidated. Even though you was sure that you're managing risk and you're running the same leverage, you put 10 Bitcoins on exchange, you have 90 in your hot wallet, you're all good and covered, you just buy 30 on an exchange and boom, you have no funds. So there's that risk. Yeah.
I agree. The technological capability of these crypto exchanges should be scaling with set leverage.
Yeah.
At least let's at least agree that if they're going to offer anything more than 10x, that they at least vet their customers to be sure that they're sophisticated enough to use them, because at this point, what's happening right now is really the Wild West, and it's really bad for customers, and it's giving the entire industry a bad name.
Yeah, it's no different than the .coms. I remember being in my university, and one of my dorm mates borrowed $1,000 from his brother and started trading penny stocks because E-Trade came out. Eventually, regulation will catch up to this, but eventually is a long word.
Thanks, gentlemen. Anatoly, a question back at you. Provocative, as per usual. What type of investment interest are you expecting given the upcoming volatility that's expected from the traditional markets? Now, we're seeing green right now, but most market analysts, most governments do believe we're going to have quite bloody streets that are going to show probably very, very soon, as per especially the unemployment statistics that have continually been coming out. Now, as per Mati and Ton, there's obviously divergences between if we believe that Bitcoin is coupled or decoupled from the S&P. Also, people obviously like to say that there's the debate between risk on and risk off, and what is Bitcoin right now? So, long-winded, asking back, are you preparing for potentially less interest or more if the markets traditional start tanking?
Interest towards crypto trading or crypto investing in general.
Investing in your fund, yeah.
If there's another meltdown caused by the lockdown or a virus or whatever, the crypto will go down probably too, like gold did, like silver did, like oil did. All assets got sold for cash in March. The whole universe, even the treasuries at some point. I mean, it was really crazy. Stocks go down, treasuries go down, corporate debt goes down, the gold goes down, Bitcoin goes down, like cash goes up. US dollars mostly. And that's one scenario. So I guess it's going to be the same. But if stock markets go down because of the fears that the Federal Reserve will not be able to manage the growing debt of the United States or gonna print a ton more of money. I mean, if there's a lot more money, stocks should go up. Like that's the first order effect. But second order effect is the how investors perceive the markets. And if they think that the Federal Reserve is actually using a measure of the very last resort, printing like another 5 trillion, because if we print 3 trillion, it's good for the economy. So maybe if we print 30, it's even like 10 times as good. Maybe it makes some sense. So if Fed starts doing more and more aggressive interventions using all of its tools, it might shake the confidence in the traditional market, and then maybe people will use crypto as an inflation hedge. That idea is still not off the table, I think.
Thank you. Mati, turning it to you. Do you agree? What are your thoughts? That's an additional Paul Trudeau's type of conversation at the end there for inflationary hedge, but specifically, you know, will we see some of go back to being coupled and alts going down? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And first of all, for an inflation hedge to happen, there needs to be inflation. While we're in lockdown, it's not very likely that there's going to be any kind of inflation. At least in the United States, nobody's spending money. There's no velocity, and inflation can happen. So that's if that scenario plays out, it's further on down the line. Whereas what some people are expecting, at least a lot of analysts that I've read are expecting, meltdown would be more likely caused by a wave of bankruptcies and defaults on loans, which would hit the financial sector pretty hard. So if that is the case, now, first of all, this is something that I've dedicated a lot of time and research to. One of the analysts on my team put an entire paper out, how does quantitative easing affect Bitcoin and other markets? And what we're in a very interesting and unique time in history where the Federal Reserve has basically said that they're willing to print an unlimited amount of money in order to prop up the stock market. So if that is the case, can stocks really go down? I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Howard Marks. He's a really intelligent guy. He's been writing his heart out since this crisis began. I've been reading every single thing that he writes. And the way he puts it is basically, can they be the buyer on every single transaction? And I mean, the short answer is they can if they want to. But what are the ramifications of that? Well, the number one ramification is stocks can't go down, which does kind of put us in a situation where there's a rigged market. But what's the end result of that? And that's not inflation. That could, I mean, Howard says he doesn't know, but come on, let's be real. If you're just going to print an unlimited amount of currency in order to buy everything, you're not going to be seeing inflation. You're going to be seeing flat out crash on in the confidence of the currency that you're putting out. Now, obviously, I don't want to be a predictor of doom or anything like that. But if we get to that situation, that's more than likely to happen. And yes, I believe that Bitcoin could be certainly used as a store of value. One thing that I did want to correct totally on is that cash didn't go up during the last crunch. Cash went down. It just went up in relation to everything else. Everything else was going down faster than cash as people kind of moved to cash as a safe haven. However, if we do see another meltdown, I think that people are a bit more prepared for it this time. I don't think that we're going to see as much panic selling as we did the last time, where everybody is trying to sell everything that they can. But I think that traders will be a bit more selective in the way that they position themselves. And I believe that a lot of the institutional movement that we've been seeing is kind of a forbearance of that, and that they're actually right now positioning themselves into Bitcoin. Just as a hedge against another crash like that. But obviously that's just a theory.
Thanks, Mati. I'm going to turn it to you, Tone. And also for everybody watching, I will look at the live chat if you guys have any questions. We have 10 minutes left, so happy to take questions from the audience. And Tone, what are your thoughts on what Anthony and Mati have been saying?
So I completely agree with Mati on your last point that you made. That's exactly what I was going to say. And I did this analysis as well, and I talked about it on my YouTube channel, that, when the crash came in March, late February, early March in the markets, everything got sold. Gold, silver, any private assets, all of them just went down. Bitcoin and the amount of cash increased because people sold everything for cash, not knowing what to do. If something else like this repeats, many people are already out and are still out. And we're not going to see, this is where the decoupling is going to take place. I took a look at what happened in 2008 with gold compared to the S&P 500, and they both crashed in the 08 crisis. But gold bottomed around October. That's a full 5 to 7 months before the S&P bottomed in March. Gold bottomed out in October. It fell 33%. The stock market eventually fell 50% because it kept falling in a second wave. But by that time, gold already started to rise because just like Maddie said, people have cash. And if this crash is happening, they're going to want to redeploy some of that cash into what they think will provide some kind of return. We just saw Paul Tudor Jones enter into Bitcoin because he's scared of inflation. Then we saw Shidran write a post mentioning that Paul Tudor Jones got in, but Shidran is getting in because he wants to hedge against deflation. So you have like two serious investors getting into Bitcoin for completely different reasons. And I found that to be like kind of ironic, but very interesting in that it doesn't really matter why you're getting into it. And we could have inflation could come. I agree with you. Like, we're not going to have it. I don't believe, I'm not expecting inflation in the US anytime soon. The rest of the world probably. I'm also expecting the euro currency not to hold together. And these are huge catalysts for Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter whether your fundamental reason for getting into Bitcoin is. My initial fundamental reason for getting into Bitcoin is because I recognize it to be the first unconfiscatable asset. Hence, I wear the shirt and have the domain. So your fundamental, and it didn't have anything to do with inflation or deflation or anything in economics. To me, the fundamental reason was, wow, I can own something no one can confiscate from me. So once you see an asset, bucking the trend and going up, as the other assets around it are not performing as well, more people are going to want to get into it. And this is where I see Bitcoin decoupling.
Thanks, Stone. All right, and here are the ones from the audience. Starting with you, Antony. Would it be much, okay, I'm going to have to rephrase this one. Is it hard to trade without volatility?
I'd say zero volatility, there's not much to trade anymore, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's switch this up. In Bitcoin, when it's ranging, what type of money management strategy do you recommend? And therefore, let's take it back as from an investing, potentially a position trader perspective. How do you see times of low volatility, if that helps them?
Well, traditional markets, in the times of low volatility, you should check options. It's a good time to put some long positions. That's for sure. In Bitcoin, the options market are still not that major, so you have to pay some premium. I mean, the bid-ask spread can be wide. The depth of the book is not that great, so you're paying a bit extra, but you can still think of some positions. But again, that's for sophisticated traders. If you just trade spot Bitcoin and there's low volatility, well, maybe it's a good time to be like not putting new positions. I mean, unless something changes in the type of analysis you use, like something changes fundamentally, for example, the rate of the transactions goes up or new wallet creation goes up and the price like sort of stays still, and you see there's some, again, decoupling in these metrics, you might want to place a trade. But if you're just looking at the price and it's standing still and you're only trading a Delta 1 or linear instruments like spot or futures, it's okay not to trade. As a trader at your home, unless you're a professional money manager, as a trader at your home or basement, you have this luxury of being out of market, of being without a position. I'm just now speaking about speculative positions, not long-term investments. But it's okay to be out and not to trade and wait for the very, very proper moment to put on a trade. It's not necessary to trade 10 times in a day, unless you're doing some HFT stuff. It's like if the market is still and no fundamentals change and there's nothing to do, then take a break. That's fine.
Thanks, Anatoly. Mati, are you in it for the tech or the money?
I don't know. I'm in it for the thrill. I see the markets as a giant video game, and you know, when I was 10 years old, I had a game called SimCity 2000, and I found out that at some point they could just master. I just mastered the game, right? So I would build the largest arcos, right, and then just fast forward time, and you get unlimited amount of money, and that's basically how I see the market is. The game where you get rich when you win.
I love that. I love that game. SimCity 2000 for PlayStation 2, right?
I had it on PC, but I think it's the same.
Yeah, on PC. Okay, same game. Yeah. SimCity 2000 for PlayStation 1 or PlayStation. No, it wasn't PlayStation. It was PlayStation 1. The original PlayStation SimCity 2000. Awesome game. Unlike Maddie, I didn't cheat.
It's not cheating. You have a time slider. You can set the pace of the time. That's not. I didn't hack the game or anything. That would be a different kind of winning.
Yeah, no, that was fun. You know, you start that game in like 1900, and you're like, oh boy, I can't. There's no electricity. How do you manage the game?
No water, no electricity. Because that's when you crash your first account, right? You crash your first account, you crash your second account, and by the time you get to your fourth, fifth account, then you're like, okay, I got this.
You know, I still remember. I spent like weeks playing the game, and then my city died because I forgot to give them like water. I forgot to provide like freaking like pipes, water pipes that are all the houses, and it's like boom, done in a week.
There you go. You forgot to hedge your trades, man.
Anyway,
but forgot to put a stop loss.
I want to comment real quick. Low volatility environments. I mean, there's no such thing as a zero volatility environment, just low volatility environment. Yeah, it's difficult to deal with in Bitcoin because the options market is, you know, so new. But in traditional environments, I love the low volatility environment as an options trader. It's great. I've been for the last month, all I've been doing is selling covered calls on stocks that crashed big time. I think some of my best trades over the last few weeks were selling covered calls on American Airlines. The day Buffett said he's out, the stock kind of crashed the next day to like $9. And I've been like, and the implied volatility went through the roof on that one. And I've just been selling covered calls like crazy. That's probably my best trade of the month so far. Yeah, if you're an options trader, you can do well. I'm definitely in it for the tech, but I'm helping to explain the tech, which should also benefit the money part.
It's a good answer. And to end the panel, Anatoly, to you, are you in it for the tech or the money?
The tech, but this tech is, I mean, it won't make you rich, this technology, right? So whoever says he's in for the money can go trade Ripple or EOS or some other volatile coin, right? But if we speak about proper blockchains with proof of work, preferably, it's just the tech. It's not about the money. It's more about the liberty. I mean, I'm very happy I was able to get in early, and it made me some money. But I mean, I wouldn't advise anyone to get into just for the money. That would be really, no, I don't want to say dumb, but it's really irrational at this point, right? Get in for the tech, and it's like Zuckerberg was building Facebook for tech or for the money. He was just having fun. He couldn't have envisioned he'd be a double-digit trillionaire after that. Definitely no. But he was having fun with the technology, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, can I add to that? I was working on Wall Street. My last company was a small private company, but I quit in very early 2015. And if I hadn't quit and kept working my ass off, probably could be a managing director by now. And probably would have more money right now if I never got into the crypto space because I got in and focused on videos, wasn't even trading much. And but I wouldn't give it up. Like the ability to traveled the world for the last 3 to 4 years is way better than working your ass off at the office. So I joined it for the tech, but it's nice to watch the price of Bitcoin go up.
Perfect. Mati, final words?
Well, I guess I'll answer the other question because both of them answered low volatility environment. Yep. It's the most difficult thing in the world, especially for a new trader to do, is to sit on your hands. But sometimes it's really the most necessary. And we're programmed that we always need to do something, right? Any game, right? If you play chess or checkers or anything, Monopoly, it's your turn. You need to roll the dice. You need to do something. But in trading, you have these times when the best move is actually to do nothing because you're going to actually just end up paying a commission. One of the ways that I went from being a losing trader to being a winning trader, or more investor, I would say at that point, was when I realized that diversification helps in a way of risk management, right? Because, when different markets move, you have a hedge or whatever that it's not going to hurt you. But where it helped me in my brain was to not be so fidgety, right? I have 200 different trades, right? So if I want to, if I'm bored right now, let me go over some of the technical analysis from something I haven't touched. It's sitting in my portfolio for 6 months and I haven't even looked at it, right? And that's really where it was for me. It was in that low volatility period, you just go over your portfolio, you can go over what you're holding, what might happen next, but you at least have something to do in that time. And it may sound silly, but it really worked for me.
That's very good advice. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Ton, Mati, Anatoly, thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Leah, thank you very much. You actually have some few minutes left. So Leah, if you yourself would like to add any remarks or have any closing remarks, please feel free to do that. Or if there are any questions directly addressing you, Leah, you can still answer some of the questions.
All right, do we have Leah?
I don't see Leah. I think she might have left.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
Oh, we haven't said
Yes,
Hey
Leah
guys,
is gone.
I'll take it. Maddie, where can people find you? We never really did intros, so we can do
Thanks,
close
man.
statements.
Quantumeconomics.io is my website. I've put together a very strong team of analysts. While you're on the website, Quantumeconomics.io, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is read not only acclaimed by many people within the crypto industry, but also being read on a daily basis by people in the Wall Street Journal, in Thomson Reuters, CNBC, Forbes, Bloomberg, etc., who are constantly getting back to me with their feedback. So that's absolutely free, and explore the website. We have many other different services for beginning traders and advanced traders.
All right, and Totally, how about you? Tell us about, I believe you run a fund, and where can people find more about you?
Yep. We actually do run a fund, but the main business, I'd say, it's our brokerage company, Exante.eu. It's, I guess, the only place in the world still where one can trade spot cryptos plus all other financial instruments from the same account with the same margin and sometimes even cross collateral. So, for example, you can trade CME futures versus spot and get cross margin. Ain't no other place worldwide where you can do that. Maybe some OTC arrangements, but for a DMA product like with a terminal, desktop, mobile, and web, that's just us. And it's all regulated, obviously, in Europe and licensed, both the crypto part and the stocks and futures and options part. So Exante.eu website, and you can check us out.
Awesome, thank you. And I guess I'll close us out. My name is Tone Vase. I run a YouTube channel under my name, Tone Vase. Also have tonevase.com. And I run 3 conferences. One is called Unconfiscatable, takes place in Las Vegas. That was probably one of the last big crypto conferences that took place before everything got shut down. We also have Understanding Bitcoin Conference. The website for that is understandingbtc.com. That one is more, I wouldn't say it's a tech conference, but it's more, it's technologically inclined, where we try to educate Bitcoin users on how to use that Bitcoin more securely, better, more efficiently. And finally, thefinancialsummit.com, which is an event for traders and funds with some trading education. And it's an event for high net worth individuals as well, so that people can get together in a week-long environment and just share ideas and cooperate on anything trading and finance related.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. This was a great panel, and thank you for finalizing the panel without your panel moderator. You guys were awesome. So let's continue the program with our next talk, for which I would like to present to you Richard Ells. Richard is the founder and CEO of Electroneum. Richard, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you very much indeed. Hope everybody is well. This is a very fast little slot. That is a talk about what we are doing in Electroneum Phase 2. So we've had a big Phase 1 part that was about massive splash in terms of impact of bringing on lots and lots and lots of users. And those users were taken on by a huge viral campaign of effectively airdropping, by having rewards going out in ETN terms, which we've done in a very large way. Excuse me, I'm just shutting Microsoft Teams that was binging at me incessantly. So so effectively stage 1, phase 1, a massive success. And people were saying, okay, give us some more details about phase 2. The most important part probably of phase 2, or there are lots of important parts, but the thing that people are most interested in terms of getting into the granularity is the fact that we've ended ETN rewards. And that's a pretty big step. That was the thing that got us this huge viral growth. So people are saying, okay, tell us what that means a little bit more. So you obviously can't continue to give away vast quantities of something forever. And it was always planned that we would come to an end date. We picked a sort of an arbitrary number of 100,000 airtime top-ups. Seems like a pretty good place to be. How many real crypto projects have managed to get 100,000 sales of something in the real world? Probably not too many, so let's pick that. So we did 100,000 airtime top-ups. Now, we've switched and we've now done 120,000. So we've switched off rewards. Now, that the rewards accounted for about 5% per annum inflation, token inflation. So this is the amount of ETN that is in circulation. It was adding about another 5%. Now, if you look at other projects, so if you look at Ethereum, it's got 4.49% token inflation. Bitcoin, I think now might well be down to the 2% or 1.8% even token inflation. Some other projects have got much higher token inflation numbers, but we were running at around 9% token inflation per annum. And one of the radical steps that's here that maybe not everybody will understand its impact, but we are reducing the amount of token inflation. So we've dropped it now, 5% that we were using on on the reward for mobile mining. The ETN rewards program is done. So we're now down to 4.1% token inflation. But we have a fork coming in July where we get right on top of our token inflation even more. We take it down from 4.1%, which is what it sits at now, down to around the 1% token inflation by block reward. So that would mean that from our block reward point of view, this is the amount of reward that's shared amongst our validators, amongst those NGOs. That would be about 1% per annum inflation. Now, that does not mean that's where our inflation will sit. It will be slightly higher than 1% because we have the ETN reward wallets still exist. But what we want to do is, as a business, we are going to keep our token inflation under 2% per annum. And we will do that by only issuing ETN rewards in small targeted quantities to users that are making a difference. So this might be a new shop coming on, or a chain of shops. It might be a utility company or someone that we are incentivizing, although it's just as likely to be small ambassadors that are working to grow the Electroneum ecosystem. It will also be people who've got the M1 and or M2 smartphone that Electroneum has manufactured. Those phones were touted as the phones that pay you back, so they will continue to do so. There will be a reward for the people who purchase those phones. Every single one of the people that are using them is a walking advert for Electroneum. It's well worth the token reward. But we're going to monitor the token economics extremely closely, and we are going to ensure that we maintain a sub 2% token inflation rate. So that's quite interesting news, makes a big difference, I think, to people who follow token economics. So we've launched ETN everywhere, and I think if you go and have a look at etneverywhere.com, you will see that we've got tons and tons of projects on there. It launched at less than 1,000. I think it's about 1,300 and some odd places that you can spend your ETN. So you're going to see that growing over phase 2 as we bring more and more places on to spend ETN. Of course, the more places there are to spend ETN, the more interested people will be to earn ETN. And a large part of phase 2 is going to be us making AnyTask an even bigger success. I mean, we've had hundreds of thousands of visitors. We've had thousands upon thousands of tasks listed. And it already has been a bit of a whirlwind in the few months that it's live. But we want that to be tens of thousands of purchases going through that platform, because each one of those purchases is new fiat money coming in to the ecosystem of ETN via way of AnyTask, and that's really helping power this whole thing and make it all work seamlessly and nicely. So we've got loads and loads of things stacked up for the coming months. We really want to get that crypto community back on side. We are a top 5 cryptocurrency by real world use. We've done everything that we said we would do at the beginning. We've smashed it out of the park in terms of actually delivering real world use and massive real world use, bigger than virtually every other project that's out there. These are real users with a real benefit. So those people are on side and they get it, they're using it, they've got a benefit. But the crypto community, I think partly they perhaps disbelieve some of our figures. So we've got some verification coming out that says, no, these guys really are delivering. This is real. These are real. Hundreds of thousands of transactions, app to app, real things are going on, really exciting stuff that puts us right at the top of the tree in terms of crypto projects that are real, that are fundamentally bringing new people into the crypto space. ETN Everywhere is doing that. We've got ETN Donate. I think there's been 23,000 or 25,000 ETN have been donated on that, and it only got promoted yesterday. So that's another way for us to introduce people into becoming validators and expand our validator network and expand our presence in the sort of the NGO arena. I'm just keeping a quick check on the time to make sure that we've got time for questions and answers afterwards. I'm sure there will be some coming through. I will grab my phone to answer questions as they come in. So effectively, what we're going to be doing is we're now going to be starting something that we've talked about before, but this is now actioned, ready to start at the end of next week, or during next week, in fact. We have a whole list of sites that we've negotiated with to have banner space. We've got some AdWords. I think we've got some YouTube stuff going on, but we've certainly got a much bigger push into gaining back the hearts and minds of the crypto community. It's really important to us that people in crypto love us as much as the real world users that we've got. So we're delivering a real value and a real benefit to people. And the crypto community, I think, have largely missed this. I don't think that crypto people have said, Electroneum, wow, they're up there as a top 5 cryptocurrency. People only judge cryptocurrencies by one thing and one thing alone, which is a bit of a tragic shame, because there are some projects out there that have massively delivered. I don't know of any others that have delivered as well as ETN has. So it's going to be an interesting time, and it all kicks off next week. So let me have a quick look to see if I can find the questions that should well be coming in. If I could get my little Slido app to open, which is where they're pumping the questions through from the community. Hopefully, we will be able to answer some questions that are coming in. Certainly, one hopes so. Otherwise, it's a bit embarrassing. Let's have a look. No questions coming in except for one. If somebody asks, oh no, I've already answered that. So guys, at the office, I'm waiting for questions from the community. So if somebody wouldn't mind pumping me some questions through, that'd be really cool. But it doesn't matter because I will carry on talking. So ETN everywhere. As I say, we've got 1,300 plus places that people can spend their ETN. It's really important, of course, that this ETN that is in the ecosystem continues to transfer around that ecosystem. We're not going to be pumping it out the door as fast. So you're going to see a slight slowdown in the user registrations, but we can keep the velocity of ETN going. Anybody who studied economics will know about velocity of money, M1, money supply. ETN isn't money, it's crypto. But guess what? It functions in largely the same way. It's a transfer of value from one person to another. We have seen unbelievable things, 270,000 plus app-to-app transfers. This is someone walking up to a street vendor and giving them something for what they're doing. There is 75 shops in Uganda that you can buy stuff from those shops. We have an agent network coming on. I'm hoping in the next couple of months that enables many more places to buy food in Africa with ETN. We've got loads and loads of stuff planned. And all of that is going to be listed in ETN everywhere, enabling people to find and spend their ETN rewards. Nobody's given me any questions, so I don't quite know what's happening. I was under the impression that we were supposed to be getting questions coming in, but thus far, I do apologize, but they are out so far. So do you know what? I'll give up waiting for questions, and I will just say some more stuff about where we're going. So ultimately, we've got the advertising campaign starting next week. That's to win over the hearts and minds of the crypto community. Super critical to our project that everybody on both sides understands how powerful this is. We have the case studies that are coming through from AnyTask. If you haven't looked at them, you need to have a look at those. We are genuinely changing people's lives with Electroneum. So it's great that the crypto community use crypto, and it's great that Bitcoin gets used and Ethereum gets used, and I'm a big passionate believer in crypto. So I always want to see cryptocurrencies moving forwards, and I use them as much as I can. But when you start looking at the developing world, which is where we're predominantly being used, that's where it gets so exciting, because it's not just cryptocurrency for the sake of it. I mean, when I make a payment, and I make payments relatively regularly in Bitcoin or whatever, but when I make a Bitcoin payment, I probably could have got the funds there some other way. If I'm paying for some ad space or something with Bitcoin, could I have sent some funds in US dollars to them? Yeah, I could have done. These guys have no digital payment method. Crypto to them is so exciting. It is such a different thing in their lives. This is where we're going to see adoption. We've already seen it as Electroneum, but you're going to see it in other projects as well. The developing world most certainly is where crypto belongs. It's going to be an amazing thing to see over the next few years. Electroneum wins back the hearts and minds of the crypto community and massively pushes forwards AnyTask to become one of the competing sites to the big players such as Upwork, Freelancer, Fiverr, and we start seeing huge numbers of people. And every single one of those is being introduced in the most subtle way into a crypto project. So even though most of them will never have been involved in crypto, they're getting involved in crypto by making that $10 purchase or $5 purchase, because it gets converted into ETN and the remittance takes place in that way. So as such, there is no shadow of a doubt in my mind that we are moving from phase one into the strongest possible place. Our phase two will be even bigger, even better. Now, it might not be bigger in terms of user numbers, but in terms of use and us understanding how it's being used, it will be bigger. So real world use is super critical. You can't get to mass adoption without adoption. And we have pretty big adoption already, but I think I can take this from being tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. So I've got to run because I think my time may be coming to an end, or
Hey,
I
Richard, do you
see
hear
somebody
me?
has arrived. Hello. Is my time winding down, or do you want me to continue? I was going to have some questions, but they didn't appear to turn up, I'm afraid.
No, your time's not over. I just would
Okay.
like to ask you some
So
questions.
look, guys, I'm going to wind down. What I'll
I
do
just
is
wanted to
I'll
step
jump
in
into
and
the,
ask you some questions
take care of time
from the
for 5
community.
minutes has just
We have
appeared.
it
So
here on
it looks like I
Slido.
need to fill 5 minutes.
So,
Am I the sort of
Richard,
person who can fill 5
what plans
minutes?
do you
I
have
think
to get
probably am.
Electroneum
So,
listed
I've seen a few
on
other community
new
questions
exchanges?
that
Is there
get
anything coming up in the
I was
future?
rather hoping they were being collated and pushed through into the app, but that doesn't seem to have happened. So, or I've clicked on something totally incorrectly, or failed to follow an instruction. But where we stand with Electroneum today is in a very strong financial position, a very strong backbone position. We have an amazing sized community. We've got an amazing size volume of users who are actually transacting. So I'm really excited about the coming months and what we have going on. Let me just have one more look to see. I've got somebody who said, please click the link above. Okay. It's the ANON Summit event. I've got loads and loads of them here, so I don't know whether or not this is the right place. I'm going to start reading them. Do you have any plans for retail tie-ups in Ireland? Okay, no, none at the moment. I'll make these fairly quick. Does ETN token economics matter in a closed mining environment? Well, I'll leave that to you to decide. Does token economics matter in a closed mining environment? Well, if somebody went out today and fired out, there's 21 million bitcoins, right? So if somebody went out and fired out another 500 million bitcoins, what would happen? Is it a good thing for Bitcoin, or is it a bad thing? There's lots more supply out there, so maybe it's a good thing. But what would you think? What do you think about? How does that make you feel about if somebody fires that off? So the more anything controls inflation, token inflation, I think that you need to control that, because you need mathematically for electronically for ETN to be electronically sound value. That's really important. So yes, it doesn't matter about closed mining. Closed mining is totally irrelevant. So if you imagine, were you, I'm not too sure who you are, but were you a miner? Most people are not miners. We only had, a couple of 100,000 miners, but we've got millions of people who've got some ETN. So who is controlling the mining is really quite irrelevant. And we've still got people getting that block reward. They are our validators. They're still getting the block reward, but it's going to people that have got really exciting and powerful projects. So what matters in token economics is for the end user's value. I can't talk about it in too much detail because we're getting into the realms of talking about price, but you need to go and have a look at token economics. Imagine what would happen if 50 million extra Bitcoin dropped into the market today. Do you want it? That is token economics. That is token inflation. Bitcoin's token inflation sub 2%. Our token inflation sub 2%. Is it important? Yes. Is it to do with anything outside mining? 100% it is absolutely to do with it. Any huge partnerships in the pipeline? Pay with ETN on Amazon? No, nothing that size. Nothing that size. Bear in mind, being able to pay for your utility bills with electricity companies around the world, they are big enough. That's a massive deal. No one's ever done it. It's a big deal. So I'm very excited to be part of that. In the hearts of crypto miners, we need to be on bigger exchanges. Well, of course, we are totally playing. So in terms of exchange strategy, what we needed is volumes. And I think part of when I say winning back the hearts and minds of the crypto community, all projects have this sort of balancing act between adoption and the market. I talked about it in my keynote speech. You definitely need both sides of that. And we want to be on Binance, and Binance will want us, but they'll want us once the volumes are back, right? We need volume. How do these exchanges make money? They make money off volume. Low volume, they're not interested. Got to be high volume. So will we list on Binance? 100%. I'm very, very confident that at some stage we will list on Binance. Can I make it happen myself tomorrow instantly? I cannot. I have to work towards it, and that's what we're doing. US exchanges, we have US lawyers working to try and get us the paperwork that we need to do for that, and that is an ongoing task. I've got a conversation on Friday with them about that. So we are definitely trying to get on there. I've got 8 seconds left. So listen, thank you everybody for being involved. I'm sorry we had a few technical difficulties today and I didn't get the questions until very, very late. I do apologize. Thank you for your time at the summit. Really, really appreciate it. Have a cracking rest of the summit and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Richard, for this, and thank you for joining us again and answering those questions. Before we get to the last panel of the day, I wish to take this opportunity and thank people who are working in the backstage so tirelessly to make this event as perfect as it gets. This is a new experience for everybody, having an online event in such a scale. And guys, I can tell you, there is so much time, effort, and energy which goes to the planning of such event, even though it's online. We have about 25 people working here, long hours to make sure that people from different time zones and all the speakers, everything is perfectly synced. So I also would like to take this opportunity and thank them all. This brings us to the last panel of the day, for which I would like to welcome panelist Marta Piekarska-Gater, who is the Director of Ecosystem at Hyperledger, Matthew Hein, who is a Strategy Board Member at Radix DLT, Montse Guardia, who is the General Manager at Alastria Blockchain Ecosystem. This panel will be moderated by Thomas Cox. I believe some of the panelists are here. Hello and welcome.
Hi, hello. Very pleased to be here with you.
Same here. I'm still waiting for your video. It's going to come up in a few seconds, guys. So, hi, please, welcome, and can you introduce yourselves?
Yes, Matthew, you start first.
Okay, thank you. My name is Matthew Hein. As mentioned, I'm working currently for Radix DLT. We're a public permissionless DLT platform that's currently in development, but has been in development for a number of years with some exciting features. And I'm very excited to be participating in this panel today because governance is a really important part of what we're doing, and I think in general what's going on in the public permissionless blockchain space.
Hi, thank you, Matthew. Hi, this is Montse Guardia. I'm General Manager of Alastria. Alastria is an association, a non-profit association. We are more than 550 enterprises, public administration, government, and academia. And imagine that we are based, we have started in Spain, we are working hard in Europe, and we are also having good connectivity with our colleagues in Latin America. But you can imagine there that governance is a key topic for us. We see Marta.
Yes, hello everybody. Sorry, I was coming up from another conference.
I'm going to another conference in 30 minutes, yeah. So it's quite interesting today.
Yeah, it is.
We are doing just few introductions, so I think if you can introduce yourself.
Is that my turn now? Okay. Yeah. So welcome everybody. My name is Marta Piekarska. I'm Director of Ecosystem for Hyperledger. Hyperledger is an open source project that is hosted by the Linux Foundation. And we provide a space, a safe space for people to collaborate on open source blockchain for enterprise-grade blockchains. We've been around for over 4 years now, have loads of interesting member companies. We are a member-based organization and loads of interesting projects. That's why governance is an incredibly important part of what we do and part of my research as well.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your introduction. Thomas is going to join us in a few seconds. But Marta, can you tell us a little about blockchain governance?
Sure. I mean, this is a very complicated topic. I think it won't be as easy as me just saying in few words what blockchain governance is. I think that there are two aspects to blockchain governance. First, we need to think about it from a perspective of how do you accept new members on your blockchain? How do you make sure that people can join, or how do you manage the transactions, and how do you resolve disputes? This can be done on chain, as we call it, meaning that it is encoded in smart contracts, or as it happens in cases of most consortia out there, off-chain, meaning it's a traditional governance model where we have some documents that we all sign and make sure that we follow the law, and if we don't, then there are courts to resolve that. So this is like the biggest challenge and part of blockchain. On the other hand, of course, you also have question around how do you build a consortium? How do you not run the network itself, but how do you run a consortium that is using distributed ledger technologies? And that's a whole different kind of forms.
Thank you, Marta. Matthew, do you have something to add to the same topic? Maybe you can define it from a different angle.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe taking a very broad view of the concept of blockchain governance or DLT governance, there's a wider range of technologies than just blockchain here. I think one of the fundamental important things about this class of technologies is it gives us a tool that we can use to create collectives. We can create, what I mean by a collective is a combination of a set of companies that wants to participate in a consortium where they can resolve financial transactions between them, or it could be something that goes to a global group of anonymous individuals that want to create something that looks kind of like a borderless digital state with its own laws, its own spending policies, its own economic policies. All of these different kinds of collectives are possible and enabled by the technology. And so fundamentally, blockchain technology or blockchain governance is just governance. All the ways in which people have come together to conduct commerce, to distribute capital, all these sorts of things can now be done in a new medium. And so we need to apply all of the rules that we've learned for millennia as a species about how we govern these kinds of collectives to blockchain now. And the forms those might take might be different because these are different sorts of, it's a different mechanism we have to work with. As mentioned, we can now do a lot of the mechanisms of governance on Ledger in a more automated way and in a more decentralized and trustless way. But also there's a bigger picture of the ecosystems that wrap around these networks that also needs to be governed. So it's a quite broad problem, and it really depends on what you're building with the technology.
Thank you, Matthew. Monse, what about you? Oh,
thank you.
I see
Yes.
Thomas is here. Thomas, hi.
Is here.
I'll leave the panel to you.
Okay. Yes, I will just add that I completely agree with what you said, but I will insist that it's quite complex sometimes because we are changing the point of view, and we're introducing a concept that is trust. So we are pushing for a new framework called trusted framework, because the relationships between companies and between the different actors within the blockchain are changing. At the same time, there is not the same the governance in the software than the governance in the use. So that is quite interesting panel, I think. So I let Thomas to continue.
Are you ready, Thomas?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Didn't hear the question.
No, we just started. Yes, it was definition for governance. So now the panel is on you. So.
Right. So the shortest definition I've ever come up with for blockchain governance is, or DLT governance is, the collective management of emergent issues. And so collective, because it's a group of people that have to stick together. You can't just, fork your way out of it. Otherwise you break your chain. Management, meaning you don't just kick the can down the road. You have to actually solve whatever the thing is. And then emergent issues are things you didn't anticipate and don't already have prefabricated answers for. It's not something that's just, oh yeah, we run a line of code and handle that. So blockchain governance is the gray area between all the stuff we thought about in advance and already have policies and procedures for. And it's the stuff you can't ignore. So we have to come up with a decision, whether that's increasing the block size of Bitcoin or segregating the witness signatures or something like Ethereum 2.0, which apparently is always 2 years into the future. So that's my definition of blockchain governance. And I'm defining it in a way that makes it hopefully sound like something you can't ignore and can't not have. And the implication, and this is borne out by everyone I've spoken with on the topic, if you lack appropriate governance, late joining stakeholders won't join. Right? The early adopters believe passionately in the project, but the late adopters want practicality. And if you've got a gap and your governance is weak or missing, you won't get your stakeholders, you won't get your critical mass, and you'll get stuck at the proof of concept level. And I'm hearing that pretty routinely out in the field, that people get to proof of concept, it stalls out. Afterwards, they go, well, what happened? What did we do wrong? And the answer is, yeah, we didn't have our governance story straight. And now that we've defined it, I'd like to hear just very briefly how each of you panelists came to get into this blockchain governance space anyway. Maybe you talked about it in your intros, but if there's a little more to it than that, like why governance? It's not cryptography, it's not peer-to-peer networking, it's none of the cool technical stuff. It's this mushy area that most people honestly kind of want to ignore. But you're all three actually deeply involved in it. So let me start with Marta. How did you find yourself involved?
Well, governance is something that we can't escape, and building a peer-to-peer network, which has many participants that need to interact with each other, we do need to understand what is the way that we are actually going to be coordinating all of this. We say that it will coordinate itself, but what does that mean? And especially in terms of enterprises and companies using distributed ledger technologies, they don't really know how to move from their stronger beliefs and traditional methods to something that is more fit for the novelty of distributed ledgers. So I think that governance is one of the more exciting topics around distributed ledgers, because it is so hard to solve. And actually 90% of it is probably the human factor in it, and changing perception and perspective of companies being involved. So I guess, in Hyperledger, we have loads of members, loads of consortia, loads of frameworks and tools. So we are very deep into trying to figure out how can you navigate this ecosystem.
Yeah, and you guys have obviously run into governance challenges quite a bit. I'm going to ask Monse if you'll tell us a little bit of your backstory and how you end up in governance, and then if you can also add your favorite story of governance gone wrong, or a problem that governance would have solved if only we'd had some. But your origin story first, please.
Thank you. My origin, I'm a founder of Alastria. When we started to talk about discovering what was doing blockchain in different banks, I was in the banking sector, in the finance, and I was doing innovation and digital transformation, and I was going deep on this blockchain and DLTs, and I was wondering with other members of the community, blockchainers, like really understanding that that was not useful to use in a single company. I think blockchain is about using it within companies, within competitors, and within partners, and within providers. And for doing that, we should work out in something that was enable that. And this is why we found we found the solution just having this association, no? We bringing live an association between different markets, different segments. And imagine now that I'm the general manager, no, is how we balance this all this interest and also incentive within the different partners, different members, to make it happen, to use the network and to use the technology in the proper way, no? And as Marta was
if I
saying,
understand, Alastria's got like what 500 some members. I mean, this is not a small effort.
No, 550 over 2 years, almost 3 years. We are 2 years and a half now, and we have been increasing. We are increasing every month. So
you've really had to make it seem safe and compelling. And I'm going to come back to you for your horror story, but I want to hear Matt's origin story first. Matt,
sure.
How did we lure you into this odd place of blockchain governance?
My origin story, a radioactive DLT spider bit me one day. And, yeah, I mean, in some ways I started in governance. It was one of the first places I ended up. My background is very much technical, but I've always been drawn to systems engineering problems. And what I mean by that is looking at a solution not just as the core piece of enabling technology, but everything that gets wrapped around it. And so one of the exciting things about DLT to begin with, what drew me into it, was the fact that you get these amazingly impactful, complex systems that naturally get wrapped around the technology. It's kind of like, you know, you can't understand the internet as a technology without talking about politics and culture and things like that really give it meaning. And I think similarly with DLT, you basically can't describe a DLT network without talking about things like economics and finance and importantly, governance. I think even if you think you have a network that's just a pure piece of technology, if you look at the ecosystem that technology enables, there's always governance there, whether it's described up front or whether it just emerges from a set of individuals acting in their own self-interest. So to me, you can't separate governance from the technology. And so I've ended up looking quite a bit for the last few years about how you design governance that goes with the design of the underlying technology.
Right. So I think I'm defending the thesis that governance is mandatory and vital, and that may or may not be true, of course. But what's an example of an instance, a story, a use case where either governance saved the day or the lack of governance really hurt things? And I'm going to start with Montse on that one.
Yes, I will. Yes, I can say, thinking about what can save, no, when, for example, that's for me clearly, no, when you have the same segment, you have competitors, and these competitors need the same thing, but for example, providers or some supply chain contacts, you need at the end, you are doing the same thing. Everybody in the same market is somehow repeating the same actions. So in order, when you discover blockchain, discover the distributed ledger, the accountability between multiple partners, doesn't matter if they are competitors, we are going to share what is the same burden for everybody. You are saving time and you are saving cost, and you are not dealing with any competitive advantage you are giving to your competitor. So in that case, if you are able to govern, to have a good governance between competitors in the same market, taking into account regulation, if you are, according to the regulation of competition, adding that and having a blockchain where it's used in a good way for different competitors, it's clear that you save cost and money and you are more sustainable. That will be an example of what you save. No, what could be a lack of governance, no, is if you agree to do that, you don't have a neutral element, no, that is, if it is not clear, really clear, the business relationship between the different competitors sharing part of the information that is the part of the information that is needed for all of them, if that is not clear from the beginning of the design, there is a moment that the effort is not worth, because it will be always disagreements on the implementation of the smart contracts, and you will be keeping your time trying to design and define rules that never will go live. So it's very important when you are onboarding the technology, you also are onboarding a change management, a change on the organization, where it enables to understand the criticality to define good business rules at the beginning.
And I'm going to reinforce that having the rule up front as people are coming in the door, as they're joining, as they're signing the agreement, hey, this is how we're going to make changes, or this is the rule we're going to follow, or this is the committee that makes the decision on timing or whatever. Tremendously important. And I'll give you a soccer example, because it's not a blockchain example. There was a tiebreaker in, I think it was the last World Cup, where Japan advanced ahead of, I think, Turkey. They were completely tied, except that the Japanese team had slightly fewer yellow cards during postseason play. And the year before, that had been established as like the fourth tiebreaker. If all the other things were tied, wins and losses and points scored and everything, then it was yellow cards. And they hadn't used the rule for a year. And then it was like, oh my gosh, these guys are totally tied here and they're tied here. Oh wait, yellow cards. And so one team went forward and one team didn't. But it was a rule we agreed to last year. And so there were no fuss. And so preloading that and having the rules written down and agreed to in advance, even simple ones, even arbitrary ones, saves you a world of pain, as opposed to, oh, we're tied, now we have to decide how to tie break. Well, I don't want, no, not yellow cards. That's a terrible idea. And then we start fighting over the criteria because we actually are fighting over the outcome. So yeah, preloading, that sounds tremendously important to me. But how much governance is enough and how much is too much? Matt, I'm gonna hit you with that question first. When we think about governance design, at whatever stage of maturity your project is, how much is enough? How much is too much, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at it in two different ways. In one sense, enough governance is just barely enough to serve the need. You certainly don't want to build additional bureaucracy that you don't need to accomplish the objective that you're trying to reach with the network and for the people that are joining that network. On the other hand, defining enough is I think a more complex challenge than a lot of people give it credit for, because if you don't have protocols or rules or whatever it is, as you were saying in the soccer example, if you haven't stated these things up front, any of those decisions that fall outside your stated governance, those decisions are going to end up being decided in ways that may not actually represent what the stakeholders of the network want. They're basically going to be decided by the people that have leverage or some other way of swaying the decision that isn't necessarily the most accountable mechanism. And so I think we want minimal governance, we want just enough, but you have to make sure that it's comprehensive enough to cover the range of decisions that really are meaningful to all the stakeholders of that network, of that collective.
And could that be handled with some sort of a catch-all? Marta's about to talk.
No, I just wanted to really agree. We like, or Brian likes to use this phrase of minimum viable governance. And that's something that I think speaks very well to what is needed. We don't want, obviously, we can't provide too much governance when it comes to blockchain or distributed ledgers, because that defeats the purpose. Like they are supposed to be, these networks are supposed to be running independent of any kind of decision body. But there has to be a way to resolve, especially conflicts. So you asked for a good example. For me, DAO was a great example of lack of enough governance. We had
You're referring to the Ethereum DAO hack from a couple of years ago.
Yes, exactly. Terrible hack, people started losing money, and there was no definition of what do we do when things like that happen, because we believe that it'll all be resolved kind of in a hippie nature of distributed ledgers where everybody loves everyone.
Happy path planning. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll all just get together and we'll decide at the moment without actually having a structure or a method or a process or any sort of structure or institution. Yeah. So I had written, I don't have the slide to show, but what I thought was my minimum viable governance is the change control board shall be the first 3 people to join the chain until we pick something else. And then when you get like 7, 8 people are like, yeah, the first 3, that didn't got to cut it, then the first 3 have to yield and come up with something a little more elaborate. And you literally say anything that we don't expect that we need to deal with goes to the change control board. And you just have everyone sign up to that. And if people don't want to join because they don't want to sign up to that, then it's time to evolve the plan to something maybe more formalized, but not too formalized. I was reading a systems thinker from a couple of decades ago, and he said that, and I'll have to find his name, that you will never find a complex system that works that was designed from scratch to be complex. Complex systems that actually work are always found to have evolved from simple systems that worked. And if you have a complex system that's not working, you can't whack at it and make it work. You have to back it down to make it simple and then work your way up from there. And I'm wondering if either of any of the 3 of you agree or disagree with that sentiment. I find myself agreeing with it. And I think we've lost Monsi, but Matt and then Marta, do you want to weigh in on the thought of complexity and simplicity?
Well,
yeah, I tend to go ahead.
Go on. No, go on.
Yeah, Matt, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, I think it's, there's always a balance of these things. There's a tendency to not want to add unnecessary complexity, but then I think if you look at the design of any system, basically, complexity ends up being justified to increase efficiency. Like, again, I come up with this from a very engineering point of view, but if you look at the first internal combustion engine, it was a very simple little machine. If you look at the engine in a modern car, there's this enormous amount of complexity, but that's what you need in order to reach the level of performance and refinement that we need out of a car today. So I think if we're looking ahead at where DLT is going, today, very simple systems are probably enough. They cover the thing. We don't have that many edge cases. We don't need that much efficiency because the communities are small. I think looking ahead at the enormous potential of this technology, I think more complex systems are going to be required to have the governance system performing at the level it needs to.
Right.
Yeah,
Marta,
I agree with you, and I mean, I do believe that the more complex systems, the higher the chances that something will fail. There is this whole rule in maths that simplicity is your friend, not complexity. So it is sometimes justifiable to create more complex systems, but I think that the role of governance in case of extremely complex systems that use DLTs, because these systems are incredibly complex when they are done right. I would say that the governance is supposed to be simplifying the complexity. It's the role of governance to introduce simplicity.
Right. Okay, so we talked about the DAO hack. Matt, do you have a favorite failure case that illustrates the importance of governance?
Failure case. I mean, I don't like calling out projects because it's, we're in the fast and dirty phase of all this stuff, so mistakes are going to happen.
You can thinly disguise the story and let people feel, I know what he's talking about, but there might be 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, without mentioning specifics, I mean, one sort of class of things I've seen happen that, I mean, people are aware of some of the big dramatic stuff of, large amounts of money being lost, or the situations of, there's a market crash and then all of a sudden this network that we consider decentralized, we actually find out that there's a man behind the curtain that's able to pull a lever when things really matter. We start discovering the real nature of the governance of the system. I mean, aside from those high profile things, I think it's interesting to look at examples of projects that have notionally a concept of governance where, like, whatever it is, people can vote by the amount of stake they hold the network or whatever it is, and sort of consider that great. We've got governance now, problem solved, check the box and move on. But if you look at the decisions that actually get made out of that, it is accountable in a certain way, but does that accountability really necessarily align with the summed interest of the stakeholders of the network? I think you see a lot of circumstances where decisions get swayed heavily by the people that happen to be paying attention at that moment, or people that just happen to be have a lot of stake in the network because of reasons that don't really have much to do with how much value they're bringing to the network. So in some ways, I see those as so I see these as sort of maybe small scale failures today, but I think if we look ahead towards networks that are carrying $1 trillion worth of value, those failures start to become really meaningful.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to add to that, I think that's one of the most challenging aspects of DLTs right now, is that we are creating systems thinking of right now and kind of forgetting that these are supposed to be immutable, and immutability means forever. So whatever you do right now, the chance that you will be able to remove it, delete it, change it, or whatever is very small if you're designing your system the right way. So you have to kind of think from a very different perspective, because we're used to thinking in terms of, progressive innovation. And here you can't really have progressive innovation. You have to think 20 years ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, that, or we tear up and throw away entire systems. I've read several estimates that suggest that 80% of current blockchain implementations will have to be torn out and replaced within 2 years, simply because the technology is moving so rapidly that the stuff we've installed and have in deployment today will be utterly out of date. Well, I would say like COBOL, but COBOL is actually still in use, sadly, quite widely. And I do think that there's a difference between the immutability of a transaction and the ability to enter a correcting transaction. In accounting systems, if we close the books on January, and then in March we discover that there was an error in the January books, you don't go reopen the books in January. Usually you don't restate them. You just enter a correcting transaction that's also immutable. And this is the new reality, and everyone appropriate has to sign that. I'm not going to get off track. Sorry, I'm about to chase a rabbit, but I'm not going to do that. Well, welcome back, Mansi. I wanted to hear more about failure cases, because it's the whole purpose of governance is to handle the unexpected, or handle the things that we didn't anticipate. We heard about the DAO hack, for instance.
Yes, and in fact, it was something quite critical for me, is to be able to understand what is risk management. No? We were talking about anticipating the future to make sure the good decisions are there, but there is two huge risks that are appearing, that is between the members or the stakeholders. When you say, I'm going to have a clear rules, that is not going to change. That is what we are going to implement. We are going to also be ahead of technology to anticipate the next decision. You need to have really good understanding that your colleagues or your colleagues members on the stakeholding committee, in the steering committee, will have changes in their life, will have changes on their understanding, and to keep maintaining the same approach over the years, over the next steps, with a broader view, no? with this vision of the strategy where we are going together. That is something that needs to be taken care, and this is more what I say, a human being factor. No, it's quite critical to manage that and to have clear partners relationship with well established.
Yeah, what I'm hearing here is that there's an important element of shared values among the players.
Exactly.
Now, my head is very much into permissioned chains. I know that Mansi, is a very large chain, and it's public chain, but it's permissioned. And
Yes.
Marty, your background in Hyperledger, you tend to have a lot of private and public permissioned chains. Matt, your project is, I believe, permissionless.
That's right.
And I'm wondering to what extent having shared values or a shared vision or a shared purpose for the chain strikes you as a crucial aspect of making governance work. Mansi is nodding, so I'll go back to Mansi.
Yeah, it's exactly right. In fact, I think to draw a line between a couple of comments of both Monty's and yours, you made this point about, well, 80% of these networks are going to have to be ripped up and replaced, and we've seen even instances in the public permissionless blockchain space where networks have relaunched, or you've had fairly dramatic changes in the technology. Sometimes that you get parallel chains that get set up and are operate. This is going to happen with Ethereum. Obviously, you're going to have a Ethereum 2.0, which is has a certain amount of continuity, but not direct technical continuity. And I think that continuity comes from the community. And I think this emphasizes the point that the collective that a DLT enables is the people in the end. It's the people who are running the network, the people that are using the network. That community is really the important part of it, and the technology is there to enable it. So I think what this emphasizes is that when we're talking about governance, it's not, that includes the specific rules of the individual network that you're using, but it's really critical to that continuity that it includes that community that's wrapped around the network, because that really is what makes one of these networks possible. And I think that actually applies both to the permissionless space as well as the permission space. It's just different sets of people that are using the technology so that they can do business with each other, so they can establish the commercial relationships that they want with each other.
So as I'm trying to listen between the lines here, I'm hearing that not only is a common set of values among the stakeholders important and onboarding them to that value set, so the new people who come in late aren't thinking that the purpose is something else entirely and start pulling us in another direction and causing unnecessary strains. So to what extent, Marta, are you experiencing maybe in your projects the importance of setting a purpose, of onboarding people to the purpose for the chain, safeguarding it, and maybe guarding the legitimacy of whatever the governance institutions are? Any of those things showing up for you in your experience?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are networks that have been created, which, for instance, suffer from the big versus small players, and this is a big issue. You'll have one or two big companies coming together to create a network, and then they try to basically convince all of the small players to join that network. And there's massive fear and concern because these smaller companies are already kind of fighting their way through to get kind of to be visible and to win with those big players. And now they have to be with their greatest competitors. They are supposed to be on their network, right? So a lot of what I'm seeing
Maersk
is,
rather famously couldn't get any partners to join for over a year after they launched and said, hey, all of our partners can join, and literally no partners joined for the better part of a year and a half, I think, until they finally said, you can run trust nodes too. It won't all be Maersk running 100% of all of the validation nodes. It's like, yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it, to share the power? But I'm hearing something even more than that, that there's a sense in which the bigger the player, the more power they'll have in governance somehow. The opposite case, of course, is if it's one institution, one vote, and I have 3 banks and 27 farmers, let's just vote for low interest rates. And the banks are like, wait, we know we can't make money. And so you end up with the question of, if it's a straight democracy, do you have 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what they have for dinner?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is the first problem is people creating networks and saying, come join my network. And the answer is, well, why wouldn't you join my network? And that kind of, we are still thinking in a very siloed way. We were embracing this whole peer-to-peer system, but we are trying to make it as siloed as we can. And that kind of doesn't work. So, yeah, go on.
No, I was just reinforcing that we are talking always about ecosystems and not ecosystems, you see, and that's the big challenge, to move from the ecosystem, and my network and my systems, This is a difficult thing to talk about our network, so it's something quite interesting always. So I completely agree with you, Marta. It's very challenging.
Go on.
I was saying, yeah, this is
Matt,
exactly why we can't separate governance
Yeah.
from the technology, is that ultimately the technology is there to sort of represent the shared values of the people that are coming together and how they make decisions. And so if you set up a network and a system of governance that doesn't represent values that people agree with, they're not going to join the network in the first place.
Well, and even more so, I think that you know, when you the technology has to provide the governance, or we have to implement the governance through the technology, because that is the only way that we can ensure objectivity of execution. We all have to agree on the set of rules, but we know that these rules will be executed. With traditional governance, you know, there is the power, there is picking favorites and all sort of other things, right? It's, you can have a set of rules, but we all well know that the rules are there to be broken. So it is incredibly important to start looking at how can we encode those into smart contracts, how can we encode on-chain governance for big consortia.
Yes.
Right.
I'm sorry, Thomas. I need to
Go ahead, Matsu.
apologize. I need to enter to another panel. It's like challenging today. I don't know how. I think we are almost in the last question. I don't know if I can just jump in out or in. I'm
Go
sorry. I will need to leave in seconds. So that's my
Understand.
challenge
Matsu, thank
today.
you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you here.
I really appreciate very and great to talk about that. It's so critical to talk about governance this year, 2020, and this is the hot topic for the future over the year. So thank you very much to everyone, and very pleased for that. Thank you. I had some issues with the connectivity, so this is why I will need also to disconnect right now and enter again. So bye. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So I think there's an issue of legitimacy potentially with governance, and one of the things that I've noticed, say in Bitcoin, for instance, is as soon as somebody tries to, if you will, impose order or create some structure, or let's have a Bitcoin Foundation or Federation, or let's get together and chat and make some decisions as people face to face, there's almost instantly a very vicious chorus arising to shout them down and vilify them. And it seems that the Bitcoin governance system consists of slandering one another on Twitter, which actually might be a feature. It might be a design feature. And here's my thinking: is if Bitcoin governance is literally in the code, and like there's no constitution, there's no Bill of Rights, there's no written thing that we can then deviate from, there's no empowered committee in the code at least, then it's really like it's up to what do this decentralized group what do they do? What do they actually do? And if a person or group of people start to show up as, oh yeah, we're the government now, we're the decision-making body, that's an existential threat to people who aren't in that inner group. And it's like the first blade of grass that grows up too high above the other blades needs to be bitten off. And I think that's the viciousness of Bitcoin governance is really about maintaining decentralization and preventing the rise of demagogues, because demagoguery is like, that's one of the sources of governance power in some cases. I mean, that's how humans work. And so if it's not going to be demagoguery, what are the other sources of legitimacy? What are some better ones? And Matt, you guys actually have a very elaborate and interesting setup. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Or are we almost done? I can't tell if that was the exit
ice cream
music.
truck. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, but apparently we still have ice cream trucks in England.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, Matt, you have a very elaborate design. I wondered, how do you guys establish and maintain and defend the legitimacy of the structures you're calling into existence?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not going to sort of shill what Radix is thinking about too much, but I think the key point is that I absolutely agree that on-chain governance and these automated mechanisms are an incredibly powerful tool that we have available to us, because it eliminates the subjectivity and it also increases the transparency of decision making. That said, I think what you're talking about, Thomas, highlights that ultimately the decision making about what Bitcoin is and where that network, what its future looks like, is not just the Bitcoin protocol. You have, even though certainly there's a strong resistance to someone coming up and saying, "Hey, we're going to make decisions." The reality of it is that there are already a set of people that are making decisions. The Bitcoin protocol is not written in stone. It is what the collective of people that believe in Bitcoin choose to run as the network, and that isn't necessarily the same set of people that everyone is that represents the full Bitcoin community. What it really is, literally, is Bitcoin miners, and this is something that people have paid attention to. That there's a de facto governance system there, where ultimately you got to convince the miners to have any adjustments to the protocol that serve whoever's interest. So I guess in my opinion, and sort of the approach that we're taking about the permissionless network that we're building, is that you can't avoid the fact that there is stuff outside the ledger that is still a legitimate subject of governance. It still affects the future of the network. It's still something that you can have the best decentralized technology and the best intentions, the best community, but you could still pull that network off of its original mission if you haven't built a system that prevents these problems. It prevents decisions being made by hard power rather than representing the summed interests of the stakeholders. And so to your question about legitimacy, I think this is the critical point is, this is the central point of the governance that we've been looking at, is ensuring that there is accountability of the people that really give the network value in a way that represents that value proportionally and correctly, and building that system so that that ultimately that accountability has control of the direction of the network, so that while we don't put any power in the hands of a centralized party that can make decisions on their own behalf, we also don't let that power fall to people that just happen to be in the position of power because of the way the network operates. And this takes a lot of form. I guess just an additional 20 seconds on this is that the value of a DLT network, a public permissionless DLT network, but I think this applies to other networks as well, takes a lot of different forms. You cannot have a viable, successful network without people that are running the infrastructure, your miners, your node runners, whatever you want to call them. You cannot have a valuable, important DLT network without people that are issuing tokens and giving that, expressing value into that network and providing links to on and off-chain value. You can't have a viable network without people building applications that are allowing people to transact and use that network. All of those things, if you pull those people out of the picture, all of a sudden you have a network that doesn't make sense. And so that can express itself in a chaotic way where those people can say, unless this network does what I'm asking, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. I'm going to take my value elsewhere. And that becomes a disruptive fork that no one wants. Or you build a system that all those people, that allows those different stakeholders to come together and make decisions, and critically, decisions that all of the stakers in the end agree, yep, we're going to abide by those decisions, because even if we didn't get our way, there's a process by which we can have our voice heard.
In that sense of including the minority view and making sure people feel heard, may be as important as any other aspect of governance. So let's say we've got folks in the audience who are working on a project and they're thinking about, well, how do I design my governance? What should I include? What should I think about? Marta, what guidance would you give to folks? What would you urge blockchain or DLT projects to do or not do, or to do differently starting right away with regard to the governance?
Well, I think that a good first step is to just do your research and see what others have been doing, because while we are still early on, there are a lot of networks already out there and a lot of governance models out there. So learn from mistakes of other people. That's always a good idea.
In fact, I'll suggest that the Wharton Crypto Governance website has a number of write-ups of specific projects. Cryptogov.net is the website, and there's a number of fairly detailed write-ups. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, people should come join our IEEE governance working group. That's definitely a good place to also see what's going on and look at the products of the work that we've been doing here. And the last part, I forgot already.
Matt, tell us what you think.
Oh, the World Economic Forum framework on governance is a good resource to look at and analyze. WEF has been doing always a great job at producing those frameworks, and they are now looking for people who would want to implement it. So definitely, if you're looking for a governance model, just go to WEF website and you'll find all the details there.
Right. And that's the Nadia, I want to thank Nadia Hewitt at the World Economic Forum was the lead author and convener for the governance section of that toolkit, and an excellent write-up. I'm studying it right now. It's pretty darn cool. Matt, what did you want to suggest that people think about and do or not do or do differently with their blockchain projects with regard to governance?
I mean, I think if you're the creator of a new blockchain, then again, I think this applies really equally permission and permissionless networks. If you're thinking about what form of governance is necessary for your network, and the right ways of designing governance mechanisms, I think don't be afraid to look at the lessons of the past. Humanity has millennia of trying to solve governance problems for different kinds of collectives, and so look to the history of what has worked for people trying to share the resources of a common grazing pasture, or look to the history of how the Visa network is running. There's lots of different places you can look. None of those are going to be exactly appropriate to what we're trying to do with these networks in most cases, because we're building collectives that are quite unique. And then that have the ability of being more accountable. But I think there are pieces that we can use, and actually this gets to some of the resources you were just mentioning. I think there's a lot of inspiration that we can draw about different mechanisms that we can bring to bear. I guess one other thing I'll say about doing things differently, and I think this is maybe a little bit more to the permissionless blockchain space, is there's a tendency, and it's a healthy tendency of technologists to try to keep things as simple as possible. I think a good way of thinking about, do I need more governance than what we've thought about already, and what approach we might take? I think a couple of the critical questions you might ask looking at other public permissionless governance systems out there today is, one, look at the edge case of, think ahead in your network, think 5, 10, 20 years ahead. If you're really successful and there's a really contentious decision that threatens to rip your apart, you've got 51% of your stakeholders that really are giving that network value disagreeing 49%. What happens in that circumstance? Will the 49% walk away from a decision thinking, we didn't win this time, but we understand why the decision was made? If that's the case, then you've probably got a good system in place. If you don't, you're basically just delaying the inevitable of something turning into a disruptive fork that's not going to make anybody happy. The other question I would ask, which is a little bit of a sly one, is if everything's going great on your network, there's no contentiousness, everyone's happy, your token holders, your application builders, everything's working great, who's making decisions about the future of that network in that case? Who's making decisions when no one's looking? This, I think, this isn't the entirety problem, but I think it's a problem that not many people are looking at, because that's really important. If you have a lack of participation in governance, decisions can still be made, and that can really pull the direction of the network that isn't what you want, even if things are going great today.
Right. I know that one of the pieces of guidance I got was that people believe that governance systems, mechanisms, processes are legitimate in direct proportion to how familiar they are with them. And the more familiar they are with them, the more they see them as legitimate and reasonable and correct. And if they signed a piece of paper when they joined, but that was 3 years ago, and we've never done that thing, and now you dust it off and try to use that thing, that institution, that mechanism for an important decision, people may resist it because it doesn't feel familiar. And the guidance that I then adopted was find ways to make them engage in governance in smallish, medium-ish things anyway, even if it's annoying, just to get them familiar with the levers of power, so that when you have to use that thing for real, you've done the fire drill, so that when there's a real fire, people know where the exits are and know what to do and how to do it, at least a little bit. Let me switch the questioning up a little bit. We've been asking, what should designers of systems do? What if you are going to be a late joiner to an existing system and you want to ask some tough questions? What are the tough questions? Let's say your brother, your cousin, your son or daughter says, "Hey, Uncle Matt, Aunt Marta, I'm thinking of joining this consortium or this blockchain over here, and the governance, I'm not so sure about their governance. What should I be looking for?" What advice do you give them? What are the hard questions that late joiners should be asking to know that their interests are being protected? And Marta, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Matt.
I would say first thing is look at all of the fine print. Make sure that what I would be looking for: dispute resolution. How is it made? How are the amendments made? So do you have equal rights or not? Look at the participation requirements or the rules for participation. And probably also look at the other participants on the network. It will tell you quite a bit about, how the model works, who are, if they are people or organizations that you would want to work with, then probably it's worth considering. But if you have doubts about the network itself, then don't even think about their governance model.
Nice. I think I agree with pretty much everything I just heard. Matt, what can you add?
Yeah, I'm going to be saying similar things from a different angle. I think if you're considering joining a network, you have to think of yourself as a contributor to that network, because that's the nature of these things. You're going to be bringing some kind of value to that network, and you're going to be making investments. You're in some ways you're going to be coming to rely on that network in some way, because that's why you're there. Whether you're relying on that network to correctly manage your participation in the supply chain, or whether you're in that network because you're going to be settling financial transactions with other business, or whether you're joining that network because you believe in a different form of money and a more decentralized ecosystem of people doing commerce with each other, you're going to become reliant on that network if it has any meaning. And so I think what I would say is look at, from a governance point of view, the inputs and outputs of that, again, sort of engineering terms, right? So the inputs are, look at who's participating in the governance, make sure that includes you, and make sure that input is proportional to what you are bringing to the network. And then look at the outputs. Look at all the things that the governance can do, all the decisions that are going to affect your own interests, that are going to affect, your ability to continue to transact in a decentralized way, or your ability to trust the network to handle your supply chain tracking, whatever it is. If there are decisions that can be made that are going to affect that interest that you have, and you can imagine suddenly you're going to be in trouble because you've come to rely on something that suddenly changes direction. If there isn't a way of connecting your voice, your input to that system with that output, there's not enough governance in place, and you should be worried about that.
Right. So what I'm hearing is some sort of stakeholder analysis, some sense of what are the likely rub points, whether it's as simple as miners want higher transaction fees and transactors want lower transaction fees. So there's a market mechanism to level that out. Do you have mechanisms in place to manage that kind of thing?
And I'll go to the other end of the scale too. I'm not fully a permissionless head. If you look at historical examples, I love the D. Hawk's book about the Visa network. Not a DLT network, but if you're looking at the consortium blockchain space and you're an enterprise thinking about joining something, there are a lot of really interesting lessons from that, because this was a collaborative network. It was something that was not controlled by Bank of America. It was collectively governed by all the companies that were bringing value into that, and you can see that the participation, the weight that each of those banks had in the Visa system was directly proportional to the amount of financial value, the transactions they were pushing through that network. That's what made it work. That's why what got everyone agreeing to the governance in the first place, and that's what it's made it stable over time. So this is why I think some of the examples of, well, Maersk trying to run their own chain where they're calling all the shots, they're kind of missing the point of a collective network.
They did fix that eventually.
Yeah. I don't mean to slag on them too much. We're all learning
Right.
this stuff.
Not too much. They are groundbreaking in so many ways. I would add one or two other things. Have there been any big issues that needed to be resolved through governance, and how did those go? And are there sort of standard industry challenges in whatever your industry is, existing pressure points, existing fights, existing tensions, and how do those look like they may play out in some sort of game theoretic way inside this network? I'll give you an example of one system that's fairly sophisticated despite not being huge. Grain chain has all the farmers pick one person to cast a vote for them in a very small assembly. And how they arrange that, I'm not entirely sure, and I don't know if they have to be unanimous inside the farmers group. Then the financing people, the bankers, all have to agree. And I believe there's like the insurance companies, or there's some third group that also has a number of members, and they again pick one, and then it has to be unanimous across these groups. So it's sort of like, it has to pass the House and the Senate, or it has to pass the House of Lords and the House of Commons. You've got two different voices that have to agree completely, or they don't make the change, and they forbid making governance changes during a growing season because it's an agriculturally based system. And those are their two major rules. And everything else just balances out. I see we're at the end of our time, so I want to say big thanks to Monsi, who had to drop off, to Marta, to Matt, three of the folks who know an enormous amount about blockchain governance and DLT governance. And I'm Thomas Cox, your moderator. Thank you all for being here. And I believe we'll be taking questions in the reception area, wherever it is one takes questions. That's where we're going next. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas and other panelists. Well, ANON Summit 2020 is almost coming to an end. Stay with us for some more few minutes. We still have some exciting announcement to make. What can I say? The past 2 days have truly been spectacular. We had plenty of great minds sharing their ideas with us. We had interesting panel discussions. And not to mention, we had all of you guys joining us from all over the world. You truly made this spectacular. And for that, I wish to thank you all. And I wish to also thank our sponsors and partners. Now it's time that we give a stage one more time to the organizers and the hosts of ANON Summit, Daniel and Michael.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Shiva.
you.
We really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure. So what we are going to do next is we would like to take questions from the audience. And yeah, just shoot them in the chat. We can read it right here down below us, and we're happy to answer them. Anything that you would like to know, and yeah, let's see if there are questions. I remember one question from someone else before in the chat. It was, are we going to do ANON 2021 online as well, or will you be able to attend online? So the following thing is, nobody knows how Corona will play out, so we can't finally decide how ANON 2021 will look like, but most certainly there will be a next edition. If it's me, I would do it hybrid. So we do a smaller event here in Vienna for, I don't know, let's say 300-400 people, and the rest will be streamed online for everybody else. And yeah, I think that the future of events will be hybrid anyways, since you've seen it all. We had attendees from all over the world, no travel, no travel time, no travel costs. Nothing. So the advantages of online events are so big that I think you can't leave them out in the future anymore after what we've experienced for the last 2 days. So, Michael?
Yeah, I just want to take this chance and give another huge shout out to all the participants. You guys made this event really a great success, and also what we was aiming for is to that this event is as interactive as possible, and you guys really managed to have fruitful conversations in the chats, in the sessions, in the expo area, in the networking area, and this is what it was all about. And yeah, I just wanted to once again say thank you, and also ask you, we just take this opportunity and want to sum up, of course, this event one more time. Daniel, I want to ask you once more, what were your highlights and what were the failures of this event?
Let's do the sandwich technique. We start with one good thing, one failure, and one good thing again. So what I really liked was that all of the things that could have gone wrong, actually nothing happened. The chat behaved. We had a lot of attendees throughout the whole event. We were scared, for example, that since the event is free, nobody will show up, because if you don't invest in it, you don't care. But it turned out very, very well. And yeah, bad thing, of course, there are connection issues. Some speakers are not perfectly on time. That's one of the big issues. If it's a live physical event, every speaker is here inside the venue, and you can just grab him and say, "You're live in 5 minutes. Let's go." But here, if you're online, you're just waiting. Nobody is there. You're just hoping that they see the text messages on WhatsApp, Telegram, or email. So yeah, of course, some minor issues are happened, but that's perfectly fine. And yeah, the other good thing is or one of the highlights, definitely the keynote from Andreas. I really liked it. It had a real philosophical touch, and I think the audience received it very well as well. He also took a lot of time to answer questions, which was a highlight for me as well, because you always want to ask so many questions to a speaker, and it's always a shame if they just talk and then leave the stage immediately afterwards. So I'm glad he took time for questions. And if we're at questions, I see a lot of them here. For example, there are a lot of thank you.
Somebody said,
thank you. So Michael, do you want to take it one?
Yeah, what does ANON mean? ANON actually stands for Autonomous New Open Network. We started this whole journey actually with community meetups, and we're still organizing them on a weekly basis. They're called Block and Wine. You can join when you're in Vienna sometime every Wednesday, and it's free for everybody. Everybody can join, and we want to have an interactive community where everybody decide what will happen. And so this is where the name is coming from, ANON. Yeah, so now you know it.
One more question was, what do you think is the killer app, or what's your killer app in blockchain? I think it's NFTs and gaming at the moment for me. I know it might be for a small niche, but since I'm a gamer myself, or I used to play a lot of games, I really felt the keynote from Robbie Young, where he was explaining what benefits NFTs can bring to gaming, and what benefits blockchain gaming brings along. And I think this will be one of the killer apps if it gets mainstream. And yeah, so there's another question. Did you have a surprise favorite takeaway from you? That's the one. Yeah. What are your favorite killer apps for blockchain, existing and potential? We had that already. So what do you think? Should we get On Yavin on the screen, our co-organizer from Cointelligence? Is he already, is he here? Can we get him?
Where are you, On? On, hello.
Hey, guys.
Hey, On.
Hi.
How's it going in London?
It's good. It's been a tiring few days.
A tiring month, I would say, actually. Now it's all over.
Yep. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It was tiring, but I think that to summarize the event, it was a great success. The way that I see it, the amount of people who registered, the amount of attendees that actually showed up to the event. We've had yesterday's morning, more than 1,000 people were actually connected for a couple of hours to hear the speeches, and it was a great experience for me. And I would like to say a huge thank you for both of you. First and foremost, of course, you've been amazing partners for me. And I'm not a type of person that usually give compliments, but in this case, it's a must. And I would also like to thank everyone on the team that really worked so hard. If it's Shiva, and if it's Nisa, and if it's everyone that I didn't get a chance to actually meet because I'm in London and not physically with you guys. And of course, I would like to thank all the partners, if it's the sponsors that believed in us and believed in this online event experience that was scary for everyone, not just for us. And of course, the great speakers that we had, the great panelists that we had. And I would say that these are the nice and positive sides for me at ANON Summit. To finish off my answer to your question, I would like to say that there is one. You asked, Michael, you asked Daniel about highlights and failures.
Of course.
And I think, yeah, and I think that one failure that I would call it a failure was the surprise fireside chat that I had with Mr. Richard Hart from Hex. And I think that the problem, the two problems were that first, it was not explained well to the audience. I don't think that the audience understood what we actually tried to achieve. And when I say we, I'm specifically talking about me and Cointelligence, my company. And the second problem that I would say is that I was too aggressive. But the reason that I was too aggressive, and there is a very good explanation for it, is because I already knew that Hex is a scam before we connected for the fireside chat. The reason that I wanted to ask Richard the questions were similar to when a publication is about to publish a research story, and it's custom to actually ask for comments. So it was important for me to ask the questions and to see that I didn't miss anything, that my research team didn't miss anything, or that we thought something that isn't. But when he confirmed everything for me that I asked, it was obvious to me that it's a scam. So that's my summary of ANON Summit. I would like to thank you again, and I'm giving you the stage one more time.
Thanks, On. Thanks for the explanation. I think it was important that you clarified because it caused for a lot of conversation, good and bad, in the chat. We didn't want to explain ourselves or make a comment on it since On wanted to do it himself, which is, I think, the right way to do it. So thanks for that, On. Let's get back to some of the questions in the chat. Do you think Hopin has been a success as a platform? What features would you like for improvement or improvements? This is a good question. So from a conference organizer's perspective, we did a lot of research since we knew that the tool that we're choosing is essentially what makes the conference a success or not. Not only the tool, but it's one of the most important parts of it since it's a single point of failure. Because if the tool crashes or if the tool doesn't work, the whole conference is, excuse my language, but it's shit in the end of the day. Sorry, but I think I can be honest here with you guys. So, and improvements, Hopin is still a startup. I think they're one of the startups that heavily benefited from Corona. I know, it's maybe not nice to say, but there are of course some people that benefit from it. And Hopin is benefiting from it very well, I believe. It took us long to get even a demo. So they are, I think, under a lot of pressure as well, and they're getting feedback from 100 different conference organizers at the same time. They are working full-time on improving it. They know that there are still some bugs. For example, if you ping a person directly, you don't really get it if someone texts you in private. And for us, of course, there are also some issues in the backend which don't have any impact on the user experience for you guys. But to sum it up, Hopin is a great tool. We don't know which tool we should use else. So if we're going to do it again, or if we're going to do our meetups online, we'll do it on Hopin. We will help them to improve it. We will give them feedback as well. Also after the conference, you're invited to write us emails with feedback as well. Just write it to office@anonsummit.io. Feedback is welcome. Also negative feedback, since this is important for us. Don't hesitate to be honest. We can take it, I'm sure. So yeah, hopefully we'll receive some emails and we can learn from it and do our best to improve the conference next time. So Michi, one more question from the audience, maybe?
Yeah, another question that I would like to answer is the question about the sessions, if they will be uploaded on YouTube. Definitely everything will be uploaded. I'm not quite sure yet if the session will be uploaded on YouTube, but we have a lot of social media channels where we can share everything. So be sure that everything will be uploaded. As I said, we just have to figure some things out since it's a lot of material, but as I said, be sure everything will be uploaded.
Perfect. So I see one more question. What are the standout projects for you following the event? I'm not going to answer that. I'll keep my professional role as a conference organizer. I don't prefer any project. All of our partners are equal and great. So you don't get me to say any or call out any projects or names here. But I think we've heard so many great talks, and you can build your own opinion here. So are you considering some meetings later this month for some kind of postponed summary from interested audience? Sure, I mean, we're always up for meetings and networking. You either can find us on Telegram, we're everywhere. It's WhatsApp, Telegram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Just text us. You can also drop us an email to our office address. We're happy to meet you guys. Let's talk, let's have a chat. We're always open for discussion. That's why we're doing events. Yeah, and we will of course send out the links for all sessions, YouTube uploads and everything to you. Hopefully by tomorrow morning we'll be able to send you recordings of the stage, and by Friday we should also be ready with our survey where we want to ask for your feedback, and it would be very much appreciated if as many people as possible can participate in the survey. And so thank you very much for all the positive feedback and for your kind words. We will open, I believe 2 sessions are open already. We will leave them until 10 p.m. If you insist, we can also leave them open longer. We are restricted to 72 hours on Hopin, so I believe we could leave it open for one more day. But yeah, let's see. Have a great time, guys. It was a pleasure to host the event for you. And maybe one more final word from Owen as well, and then Michi, and then we'll just close the event, the stage for now, and see you in the sessions and in the networking area.
Okay, so final words from me. I just want again to thank everybody for joining and for the great engagement. It was a real pleasure to see everybody engaging in all the different chats. So have a great evening or morning wherever you are right now in the world. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and be sure to still network and join the open session. So it was nice to meeting you all.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Of course.
Great. So my final words are going to be thank you everyone again. And remember, blockchain and cryptocurrency is the biggest revolution that mankind ever had. And I am asking everyone to learn it, to study it. Even if you don't want to invest in it, that's completely fine. And I'm not advising you to invest in what you don't understand, but please educate yourself, because that's the future for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, On. Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye. See you next time.